Chapter 40-59. What was the use of torturing this shrew? Only by torturing what she cared about, and what she cared about would she tell him everything honestly, wasn't that so? To him, reputation and whatnot were not as important as his JoJo. This old shrew was willing to commit suicide for her master and didn't hesitate to die in such a gruesome manner. She didn't even care about her dignity. Why did she do it? Wasn't it because she wholeheartedly wanted to protect the person behind her? In this way, only by using a heavy hand on her would she be able to reveal something useful to them. Yi sat down at the table and took out a pen. He recorded everything the elderly woman said under the dim light in the cellar. Line by line, Prince Mo asked, and the elderly woman answered. She was very tactful and didn't leave out any details. Right now, elderly Lady Wang was very clear that as long as she left out half a sentence or said something that didn't satisfy His Highness the Crown Prince, she might be able to receive her grandchildren's hands or legs again very soon. Husband. Arbor went up to get some fresh air but didn't see Mo Lien and the venerable Peach Blossom Immortal coming up, so he dashed back into the cellar. However, he saw Mo Lien and Ma Yechen walking over. Mo Lien smiled faintly and pulled her small hand over, stuffing a piece of paper into her small hand. Write it all down. See if it's useful. Sir Jojo looked down and flipped open the paper, reading each line one by one. The more he read, the deeper and more terrifying the chill in his eyes became. In the end, it was so intense that water was about to drip out. So it was this person. So it was this person who had been scheming in the dark all this time, constantly clinging on to her and wanting her to lose everything. The little stoic looked unperturbed on the surface, but she had already meticulously linked and calculated everything that had happened from the lower star domain to the middle 6 prefectures and then to the upper 3 provinces in her mind. The more she thought, the more apprehensive she became. Her eyes were like ice soul frost pearls, emitting a sharp and cold glint. To think that he had hidden himself so deeply that he had even managed to conceal himself from her time and time again. Let's go to Mu, reporting to Your Highness, the Crown Princess. Xiao Yi rushed over and cupped his hands. The Mu family's main house in the Winter Moon Mountain Forest was attacked by an unknown assassin. The entire Mu family is now resisting the enemy. Eldest young Master Mu seems to have suffered some minor injuries. Arbor was taken aback as he thought, that's right. Brother should have reached Sovereign Capital a long time ago. Last time, when Tian Yun attacked the Mu family hid in the tunnels. Who would have thought that not long after, they would come again? Does Tian Yun really want the Mu family's talisman technique? Or some people have been coveting the Mu family's talisman technique for a long time. Arbor clenched her fist and held the piece of paper tightly in her hand. She looked up at Mo Lien, who was smiling at her, and said, let's go. The latter naturally nodded. The group of people quietly left the farm. Mo Lien arranged for Fong Su to lead a part of the Greenwood Guards to pacify the people. The rest followed Yi, Xiao Yi, and the other Night Pavilion disciples to Winter Moon Mountain Forest together with Prince Mo and the little Crown Princess. Under the heavy night sky, the sounds of battle shook the sky in Winter Moon Mountain Forest. Blood had already flowed like a river at the Mu family's entrance. Compared to the previous night attack, the Mu family's casualties were obviously more disastrous this time. Even the Mu family's old patriarch didn't expect that Tian Yun would make a comeback after just a few days and attack them again. And what shocked them the most was Chapter 40-60. The person who led the team to the Mu residence to kill them was actually their former Mu family head. Mu Jingfeng. Mu Jingshuo spat out a mouthful of blood, nonchalantly wiping the blood off his face. His eyes stared fixedly at the familiar figure standing at the Mu family's mountain entrance with his hands behind his back, and he could not help but burst into wild laughter. Mu Jingfeng. I really didn't expect that the one who brought people from the heavenly fate realm to harm our family was actually you. Mu Jingfeng. Are you still human? You actually, an elder was only halfway through his words when he suddenly realized that Mu Jingfeng was swatting a palm at him. A bolt of lightning struck the elder's body with the force of a thunderbolt. His upper body was instantly broken, and his entire body was like a book. With a crack, he was slammed shut by a palm. Seeing that Mu family elder's death was especially gruesome, the other elders' expressions immediately changed drastically. Mu Jingshua sternly shouted, "Everyone, don't be courteous with him. Attack together." Several elders of the Mu family timidly took 2 steps back. The remaining 5 elders, including Elder Dao and Elder Du, quickly followed Mu Jingzhuang and rushed forward. Ha! Mu Jingfeng stood with his hands behind his back, assuming the posture of an expert as he cast a sidelong glance at everyone. With a wave of his palm, he sent out another wave of lightning spiritual energy. Sizzling sounds were heard, and countless bolts of lightning burrowed into an elder's body like thin snakes. It instantly caused the elder to wail miserably. Everyone could not help but shudder. They saw that elder's body seemed to be grabbed by a force as he floated up into the air. Countless snake-like lightning bolts flowed through his limbs and bones, ultimately converging on his face and head. Elder! Mu Jingshua roared, his eyes about to pop out of their sockets. Sizzling sounds could be heard coming from that elder's face as countless electric currents twisted under the skin on his face like snakes. Not long after, with a pop, his face exploded, and his facial features were instantly destroyed by the power of lightning. His flesh and blood were badly mangled, and his entire face was flattened by the explosion. The disciples of the Mu family shuddered in unison. They clenched the weapons in their hands and involuntarily took a few steps back. Mu Dongni suddenly jumped up from the back of the crowd and roared in exasperation, "Brother, are you crazy? How could you? Halfway through her words, Mu Dongni met Mu Jingfeng's gaze. That incomparably cold gaze made her feel suffocated, and she couldn't help but shudder. Terrifying. She had never seen such a heartless and terrifying expression on Mu Jingfeng's face. Was this still the same big brother of the family head who always put the family above everything else and regarded the family as more important than the sky? No. This wasn't Mu Jingfeng at all, right? How could a person change so much in such a short period of time? And what was going on with his body? How could he suddenly stand up and possess such great strength? The power of lightning in his body was also very strange. She remembered that her elder brother had never comprehended the lightning spirit of the 5 spirits before. What was going on? Now, even this child, Xingqian, was no match for his father. She remembered that in the past, Xingqian's strength could absolutely crush her elder brother. Mu Dongni was flabbergasted. She braced herself and could not help but ask, "Big brother. What's going on with you?" Hee hee. Mu Jingfeng let out a very strange laugh. Chapter 4061. It was completely different from the way he usually spoke. Mu Jingfeng's cold eyes stared fixedly at Mu Dongni and the others. Everyone felt their hair stand on end from his gaze, not daring to breathe loudly. Kill! Mu Jingfeng suddenly raised his hand and issued an iron-blooded order to the numerous Heavenly Fate members behind him. Everyone from the Heavenly Fate sect was wrapped in diagonally hanging black robes. A crescent moon was embroidered on the corner of each robe with silver thread. Clearly, this was the symbol of one of the Heavenly Fate sect's halls. However, under such circumstances, no one paid attention to these marks. Every member of the Mu family was forced to gather all the strength they could to fight against the members of Heavenly Fate that Mu Jingfeng had brought with him. There was no other reason. If they didn't fight, then they could only wait for death. Mu Jingfeng coldly stared at them, as if they weren't his family but a bunch of weak ants. His lips curled into a mocking and callous smile, and his eyes faintly flickered with 2 balls of black mist. Kill! With that order, all the disciples of the Heavenly Fate sect charged towards the Mu family at an extremely fast speed. Mu Xingqian drew a spiritual fire in his palm and rustled it into the crowd. The fire spirit wall enveloped several Mu family members around him. At the same time, countless blue talismans flew out of Mu Xingqian's body and whooshed forward, forming a thick defensive shield. Insignificant skill. A trace of anger flitted across Mu Jingfeng's eyes, and he suddenly raised his hand and pointed. More than a dozen attack talismans, also imbued with talisman energy, whooshed into the air. They hit the defensive shield in front of Mu Xingqian by a hair's breadth. Under this attack, the talisman arrays on both sides emitted a long buzzing sound. Mu Xingqian's defensive shield was instantly broken by the attack talismans. Mu Jingfeng's maniacal laughter filled their ears. Ha 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 ha. I did it. I did it. I'm an Earth Stage Great Talisman Master, ha 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 ha. I've finally become an Earth Stage Great Talisman Master. Everyone's gazes couldn't help but slightly focus. Elder Dao couldn't help but tighten his grip on his weapon. An Earth Stage Great Talisman Master. What kind of terrifying existence was this? In the entire Mu family's several hundred years, the number of Earth-grade Great Talisman Masters could be counted on one's fingers. Mu Jingfeng, that vile spawn, was actually a step ahead of others and advanced into the ranks of Earth-grade Great Symbol Masters? Bastard! A furious roar pierced through everyone's heads. Mu Xingqian clutched his chest, forcibly suppressing a mouthful of blood. Looking back, he saw his grandfather, Mu Tsang, leading more than a dozen Mu family elders, quickly moving towards them. Beast, why aren't you stopping? Mu Tsang coldly glared at Mu Jingfeng, his eyes full of disappointment and hatred. Who would have thought that his eldest son, who was so outstanding when he was young, would actually end up in such a state with the Mu family? He actually led people to attack my family. How much does he hate my family? Mu Jingfeng's eyes revealed a trace of hatred as he pointed at Mu Tsang and scolded, "You still dare to put on airs in front of me at a time like this? Why are you looking at me like that?" This father of his, there was not a single thing that he was satisfied with. Every time, he would look at her with a look of utter disappointment, as if she was nothing more than a bug in a manure pit, completely unworthy of his attention. He hated it too much. He hated his father's heartlessness, stripping him of his position as the family head. Chapter 4062. He hated even more the person who had crippled him and forced him to step onto this underworld path. That's right, he hated them. He came to take revenge on them. However, that little bastard was truly the most hateful. However, he brought people to attack the Mu family this time. Even if he captured everyone in the Mu family, he probably wouldn't let that little bastard submit. After all, this little bastard was incomparably cold and heartless from the bottom of his heart to the depths of his bones. She would not sacrifice her own interests for these Mu family members. Mu Jingfeng narrowed his eyes and coldly stared at family head Mu. If you're willing to hand over the talisman remnant scroll, I can still spare your lives. Big brother, don't keep making mistakes. Mu Dongni could not help but cry out. I'm doing this because you're forcing me. Mu Jingfeng sternly looked at everyone, his face contorted malevolently. Xingqian, go to the ancestral hall and bring the talisman remnant scroll to father. Mu Xingqian coldly looked at the man in front of him, as though it was his first time meeting this person. His eyes did not have the slightest bit of warmth for a son respecting his father as he coldly said, "Dream on." Ha! Ha 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 ha. Mu Jingfeng's face contorted as he laughed heartily. Men! Smash the Mu family's ancestral hall for me. Mu Jingfeng's face was frosty as he gave the order. Use this jade talisman to break the array in the ancestral hall. Bastard! Countless Mu family disciples and elders were visibly moved as they glared angrily at Mu Jingfeng's crazy behavior. This was too crazy. As a member of the Mu family, this Mu Jingfeng could actually do such an inhumane thing. Fight it out with them. Mu Jingshua angrily shouted with reddened eyes as he flew toward Mu Jingfeng. You're courting death. Mu Jingfeng sternly shouted and raised his hand to slap Mu Jingshuo's chest. With a crack, Mu Jingshuo's sternum was shattered by his palm. He flew backward and fell heavily to the ground. Pfft! Mu Jingshuo spat out a mouthful of blood and fell to the ground, instantly losing consciousness. Jingshuo! Shouted Patriarch Mu angrily. He turned his head and looked at the ancestral hall. A group of Heavenly Fate disciples was indeed running in that direction. Mu Jingfeng chuckled. Since you won't give it to me, then I can only personally bring my men over to get it. Ah! Several disciples of the Mu family who had come forward to intercept the Heavenly Fate sect were chopped to the ground. They could only watch as hundreds and thousands of Heavenly Fate sect disciples in black robes ran towards the ancestral hall. Smash it for me! Mu Jingfeng bellowed. All the disciples of the All Fate sect swarmed forward and smashed the tablets in the ancestral hall. The disciples of the Mu family rushed over, but the ancestral hall was originally only so big. In addition, everyone was crowded there, so they couldn't play at all. As soon as the battle broke out, half of the ancestral hall was affected by the power of the battle and collapsed with a rumble. When Arbor arrived, he saw this scene. Her mother's memorial tablet was held in her big brother's arms. Her big brother's chest was stained with blood, and he was currently fighting with two Tianyun sub-leaders. From the looks of it, he was at a disadvantage. Who dares to disturb my mother's rest? Arbor's voice was ice-cold. All of you can die for me. Boom! A ball of divine power unexpectedly exploded in the middle of the group of Heavenly Fate disciples. The divine power ball with a large area of destruction instantly blasted many Heavenly Fate sect disciples into pieces. Wails of agony filled the air. The 8th night watch ends. I'm sleeping soundly. I'm exhausted. Chapter 4063. Little bastard. Mu Jingfeng had just let out a curse when he saw a black flame heading straight for his face. It was fast, so fast that it was practically impossible to dodge. Mu Jingfeng's expression changed slightly. He only had time to apply 7 to 8 defensive talismans on himself before colliding with that black flame. He was instantly engulfed by the black flame and sent flying. Mu Jingfeng simply did not dare to believe his eyes. He was actually sent flying by someone else's black flame. When his body landed heavily on the ground and he heard a crisp sound coming from his back, he belatedly realized that he had been knocked to the ground by someone. How was this possible? He had already risen to become a 6th-level god-tier master, alright? That was why he could crush Mu Xingqian and most of the people in the Mu family. But now, he was actually crawling on the ground like a dead dog. He completely did not dare to believe that he had actually been hit by someone and was lying on the ground again. No, that's impossible, that's impossible. Mu Jingfeng lay on the ground and shook his head repeatedly. He absolutely did not believe that he could not get up again. That was impossible. He had barely stood up for a day. He had suffered so much pain and experienced so many hardships before he could finally recover his strength and was even more powerful than before. He had stood up. He had brought so many disciples of the Heavenly Fate realm back to the Mu family to crush these Mu family members who had once stripped him of his position as family head and trampled on him. But now he was completely crushed by a person who didn't even see his hand gesture clearly. Arbor did not care about how Mu Jingfeng, who was lying on the ground and could not help but curl up from the pain in his back, was doing right now. She only knew that Mu Jingfeng had brought so many disciples of the heavenly fate realm to smash the Mu family's ancestral hall for his own selfish desires. He had even almost smashed her mother's memorial tablet. Just based on this point alone, it would not be enough even if he died 10,000 times. You guys are truly disgusting. Arbor coldly stared at the group of black-robed people standing in front of her. With a wave of her small hand, a blue spark slowly ignited. You dare to come and smash my mother's ancestral hall? I'll let you filthy creatures in the corners never reincarnate. Her voice was abnormally cold. Although her tone was extremely calm and unhurried, the words that came out of her mouth made people shiver uncontrollably. It was bone-chilling. Everyone's hearts couldn't help but tremble slightly, and there was a hint of fear in their eyes. Arbor raised his hand, only to see the blue spark floating on his fingertips ignite a beautiful arc in the air. Mu Jingfeng was sprawled on the ground. He was in so much pain that he couldn't stop moving his body as he bellowed, "Disperse! Spread out!" All the disciples of the Heavenly Fate sect were startled, but they obeyed the order and quickly spread out. At the same time, the blue sparks in Arbor's hand were already falling from the sky. Countless beautiful blue flowers bloomed like fireworks, crackling and bursting, rustling and falling into the crowd. The moment a disciple of the Heavenly Fate sect was hit by the blue sparks, blood immediately blossomed. Mu Jingfeng's back was severely injured, and he could not get up for a while. He could only move his body bit by bit, wanting to get away from the blue flames. Chapter 4064. However, these little blue flames attacked indiscriminately. Mu Jingfeng was sprawled on the ground, so it was difficult for him to move, so it was naturally difficult for him to avoid being hit. After several blue flames exploded on his body in succession, Mu Jingfeng couldn't help but snort angrily. He shouted sternly, "Arbor! You unfilial daughter! You actually dare to treat your father like this?" Arbor turned a deaf ear to this person's clamor. Blue spiritual cleansing fire poured out endlessly, and countless blue flames blotted out the sky and formed a nebula in midair. With a light tug from the little stoic's slender hand, they abruptly plummeted downwards. The blue flames seemed to be sentient and smashed towards the black-robed people as if they had grown eyes. In the blink of an eye, they had already smashed a dozen or so Heavenly Fate disciples to the ground. When the surrounding Mu clan disciples heard this, their spirits were greatly roused, and they each gripped their spirit weapons and fought back with all their might. If they didn't counterattack now, what were they waiting for? This was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, and they wouldn't have another chance if they missed it. At this time, the Mu clan disciples were also riled up by the killing. There was no need for Mu Jingyuan and the others to command them. These Mu clan disciples automatically formed small teams and cooperated with each other to charge at those unlucky black-robed people of the Heavenly Fate sect. Although the Mu clan disciples weren't very cooperative, fortunately, both sides were actually completely exhausted after a round of fighting. The Heavenly Fate sect's people were being suppressed by the little crown princess's group, so how could they exert even half of their strength? Hence, the Mu clan disciples seized this opportunity to swiftly counterattack. They didn't care about any order or morality as they ganged up on one person and beat them up violently until they annihilated them. Arbor looked on coldly from the sidelines. He stood outside the crowd and slowly walked towards Mu Xingqian. Along the way, not a single Heavenly Fate sect disciple dared to rush in front of her to court death. In reality, she didn't even need to lift a finger if there were any blind people who wanted to jump in front of her. Mo Lian, He Qin, and the others would have dealt with them remotely long ago from 3 feet away. With an icy expression, the little crown princess stepped on the blood-soaked ground and slowly arrived in front of Mu Xingqian. She reached out to take her mother's memorial tablet from him. Jojo. Mu Xingqian heaved a sigh of relief, but before he could say anything, she flicked a healing pill into his mouth. Arbor lowered his head slightly, revealing half of his slender white neck. Her eyes were extremely focused as she slowly took out a handkerchief from her sleeve and carefully wiped the 2 drops of blood on the memorial tablet. She carefully cleaned it up and gently stroked the spirit tablet with her small hand. As he turned around, he said coldly with an indifferent expression, "Kill them all on the spot. We don't need anyone alive." Yes. Countless black shadows obeyed the order and rushed into the battle circle. They caught the black-robed man and chopped his head with 3 sabers and 2 swords. Countless unlucky disciples of the Heavenly Fate sect immediately fell to the ground, unable to get up. The disciples of the Mu family held the swords in their hands and retreated to the side in a daze. Because there was no need for these weak chickens to make a move. The underworld court guards took over the mission of killing him, and they acted quickly and decisively. In less than a moment, they eliminated more than half of the Heavenly Fate sect disciples as if they were chopping vegetables. A underworld court guard kicked away a Heavenly Fate sect disciple beside him. As he turned around, the sharp edge of his sword sliced open the throat of a black-robed man behind him. The cold light flashed past as fast as lightning, dazzling everyone's eyes. Chapter 4065. A head was sent flying into the distance. The nether court guards were well trained and moved extremely quickly. Every one of them controlled their divine power and attached it to their spirit weapons. They never wasted their energy hitting the other party's limbs and only focused on chopping off the head. What was the use of a Providence disciple if you didn't chop off his head? So what if you only hit his limbs? He could still move no matter how crippled he was. The Mu family disciples were all dumbstruck at this moment, and many of them looked down at their hands in a daze. Just a moment ago, they were still being beaten to a pulp by these crooked cultivators and were practically powerless to retaliate. After the young crown princess led her men over, the situation immediately reversed. What kind of strength and influence was this? No one wanted to admit that they were weak, but this was the reality. Compared to these well-trained soldiers, their Mu family disciples were truly a sheet of loose sand. No wonder the young crown princess looked down on them back then. When the Mu family elders thought of this, they couldn't help but exchange glances and sigh quietly. Reporting to the crown princess. Another court guard swiftly arrived in front of the young crown princess and reported with a salute, "The Providence disciples have all retreated to the rear court." After them, Arbor ordered coldly. "Kill them all." Yes. Arbor looked back at his eldest brother, who was slowly recovering, and said with a nod, "If there's nothing else, come with us." Mu Xingqian nodded and caught up with the little fellow. Mu Xingqian was extremely silent the entire way. If it weren't for the little stoic glancing back from time to time, it really would be very difficult to sense his fluctuating aura. "You're upset." Mu Xingqian maintained his silence, but his tightly clenched fists that were pressed against his sides repeatedly demonstrated how terrible his current mood was. "Because your father brought people to smash the Mu residence and kill the Mu family clansmen." Mu Xingqian abruptly looked up at her, a trace of pain and anguish in his eyes. "Jojo, he's also your father." "Ha!" Arbor let out an indifferent sneer. After a while, that cold voice sounded in Mu Xingqian's ears. "She's not anymore." Mu Xingqian's heart trembled. He glanced sideways at her, only to see an indifferent expression on her cold little face. This was true indifference. There was not the slightest fluctuation in her emotions. It was as if Mu Jingfeng was just a stranger to her. In fact, this was indeed the case. To Jojo, Mu Jingfeng had never fulfilled his duty as a father. When Jojo was struggling to survive in the lower star field, what was Mu Jingfeng doing? He spent long Chuyin's dowry, ate delicacies, and raised a charming mistress. He enjoyed all the glory, splendor, and wealth. He was of no help to Jojo at all. Even after Jojo returned to Shenzhou, if he was willing to show a trace of kindness to Jojo, perhaps the father and daughter would not have ended up like this. No, there was nothing. Mu Jingfeng probably only coveted Jojo, spied on her, and used her. He coveted her talisman technique secrets and wanted to constantly spy on her. He wanted to use her identity as the crown princess to obtain some benefits. He had never treated her sincerely, so why should Jojo reciprocate with sincerity? Mu Xingqian heaved a long sigh. It was no wonder Jojo disliked him so much. After all, there was a cause for an effect. Everyone chased after the Heavenly Fate sect disciples and flew to the backyard. Chapter 4066. Who would have thought that the moment they stepped through the backyard's arched door, they would hear a sweet laughter? Ha ha. I advise you not to act recklessly. The soft voice was carried by the wind into everyone's ears. Mu Xingqian and the rest stopped in their tracks as they stood at the arched door and looked inside. Over 300 black-robed Heavenly Fate sect disciples came out from one end of the garden and surrounded a red-clothed beauty like stars drying the moon. That beauty wore a thin and soft satin dress with a bow tied at her chest. Her dress was loose, revealing half of her round shoulders. Thorny Rose, Mu Jingfeng called out with slight excitement. He did not expect that Vice Hall Master Thorny Rose would also come. Then, there was definitely hope for him. However, that woman called Thorny Rose merely cast a sidelong glance at him and immediately revealed an extremely disdainful expression. Why are you paralyzed again? Thorny Rose sneered and shook her head mockingly. You're really too weak. You're always paralyzed on the ground and can't get up. How are you going to work for our organization like this? Mu Jingfeng's complexion immediately turned green and white from this woman's disdain. He was indeed in a very sorry state right now. Mu Jingfeng, whose back was in incessant pain, simply could not stand on his own. At this moment, he was being supported by 2 Heavenly Fate sect disciples and could barely stand there. Although he was very angry inside, he still had to pretend to be a grandson and smile obsequiously. Yes, it's my fault. I underestimated this group of Mu family members too much. Jingfeng. Elder Mu was furious, his pair of ox-like eyes practically popping out of their sockets. Look at this good son of his with that flattering appearance. Was this still the once awe-inspiring Mu family's previous patriarch? Don't call me that. Mu Jingfeng angrily glared at Mu Tsang, his eyes brimming with hatred and anger. If you truly had the slightest bit of familial affection for me, you wouldn't have caused me to be in this state today. The Mu family's first elder's face darkened, and he could not help but sneer mockingly. Why don't you find the reason from yourself? Why did ancestor Zhaoyang change your position as patriarch? This shows that you simply don't have the ability to sit in this position. Shut up! Mu Jingfeng screamed, his entire body trembling in agitation. The 2 Heavenly Fate disciples who were supporting him were already exhausted after the battle. At this moment, Mu Jingfeng's entire body was trembling and struggling, and they nearly failed to support him. Mu Jingfeng hurriedly turned to look in Thorn's direction and begged with a fawning expression, Vice Hall Master, please give me another bottle of recovery medicine. I will cherish it this time. I won't let myself fall again. Humph! Thorny Rose let out a cold snort from her nose. Clearly, she disapproved of his words. Mo Lian and Hechen frowned and couldn't help but look at each other. They both had some doubts in their hearts. Recovery potion. From Mu Jingfeng's tone, it seemed to be very magical. However, he and Hechen were very clear that Mo Lian's attack had completely destroyed Mu Jingfeng's lumbar bones. Logically speaking, if Mu Jingfeng did not have a peerless doctor like Jojo to treat him in this lifetime, there should be no possibility for him to stand up. However, from his words, it seemed that he was very confident in this recovery potion and felt that once he consumed it, he would immediately be able to move again. Please, Vice Hall Master Thorny Rose, Mu Jingfeng flattered. Chapter 4067. For the sake of that bottle of recovery medicinal liquid, Mu Jingfeng did not hesitate to crawl over while trembling in front of everyone, completely throwing his dignity to the back of his mind. The group of Mu family's disciples simply looked at each other in dismay, their eyes revealing disbelief. Was this kind of person really their former family head? Why you bastard! Elder Mu Tsang was so angry that his face turned slightly pale, and his lips could not help but tremble. Matriarch Mu sighed and walked to Elder Mu's side. She raised her hand and stroked his chest. Old master, don't be too agitated. Mu Jingfeng was now willing to submit to Tianyun. He truly did not care about his own face at all. In front of everyone in the family, his disgraceful behavior was simply unbearable to watch. She stepped on Mu Jingfeng's head, which was lying in front of her, with her bare feet. All right. Seeing that you're so tactful, I'll give you another chance. Thank you. Thank you, Vice Hall Master Tu Wei. Mu Jingfeng raised his head in pleasant surprise and reverently held up the other party's foot with both hands. Arbor expressionlessly watched everything unfold before him. He was unlike the other Mu family members, whose eyes revealed resentment, anger, shame, and humiliation. She did not have any expression and merely watched indifferently from a bystander. She watched as this stinking bug consumed the medicinal liquid that the woman threw to him. She watched as he ecstatically poured it into his mouth. She watched as his body curled up in pain, rolling back and forth on the ground while howling angrily. She watched as he carelessly gnawed on the soil in the garden like a pitiful bug. His fingernails dug into his skin, until his palms were drenched in blood and not a single piece of flesh was left intact. In the end, the disheveled Mu Jingfeng finally stood up. However, his face seemed to have slimmed down and aged quite a bit. His entire person was even more emaciated. Arbor shook his head. This recovery medicinal liquid should be one of the improved medicinal liquids produced by Tianyun. Due to the black crystal controlling their consciousness, as long as their heads weren't chopped off, their bodies could still twist and shake no matter how serious their injuries were. Even if it couldn't walk upright, it could still crawl like a snake or twist like a worm. This kind of recovery medicine was a kind of medicine that allowed the members of the Sky Fate organization to get up, no matter how serious their injuries were. It sounded miraculous, but it was only a kind of medicinal liquid that treated the symptoms but not the root of the problem. A body that had recovered so quickly. Had it really recovered? Not at all. For example, Mu Jingfeng's back had suffered such a serious injury. Would he really recover after taking the recovery medicine? No, his bones were still broken, and his meridians were still in a mess. This kind of medicinal liquid only allowed him to have a final radiance of the setting sun for a short period of time. To put it bluntly, he was depriving Mu Jingfeng of his 5 senses and 6 senses. His nerves could no longer feel pain. He was no longer human. Previously, when she saw Mu Jingfeng struggling on the ground, she had been giggling non-stop. Now that she saw Elder Mu Tsang's face full of anger and wanted to surround them with people, she could not help but sneer. I advise you to take a good look before making a move. This woman smiled at Elder Mu with certainty. She then waved her hand and had people escort the group of women from the rear residence forward. Chapter 4068. The first to bear the brunt was Madame Mu, who was tied up at the front, as well as the 5th branch's Madame Hua, the 4th branch's 5th Miss, Mu Rockin, and several other female members of the Mu family. Mu Qingya's face was slightly pale as she looked at Mu Jingfeng, who was in a sorry state. It was obvious that she had seen the scene just now. At this moment, her eyes were filled with tears as she looked at her husband with hidden bitterness, as though she was very distressed by his changes. Her tears silently flowed down drop by drop. "Old master, save us, old master." The group of weeping women, who were detained by the All-Faith sect's disciples, cried and begged for mercy one after another. Matriarch Mu's expression changed slightly. Ever since the incident, she had been protected by Old Master Mu's people. At that time, they had also sent people to the inner residence to search for the other family members. However, the Mu family's branches lived rather far away in the entire Winter Moon Mountain Forest, so they couldn't immediately inform all the women to leave. Matriarch Mu only led people to save a portion of them. She didn't expect the rest to be captured by the enemy. Seeing these delicate granddaughters, who were originally raised in the boudoir and had no cultivation, fall into the hands of the enemy, Matriarch Mu's heart seemed to bleed, and the rims of her eyes turned red. "What exactly do you want?" "Matriarch, you're a reasonable person." Shen Qianwei giggled. "We've already told you the purpose of our trip. Hand over the talisman fragments in the ancestral hall, and we can consider letting you go. Actually, we really don't want to be enemies with the Mu family." Matriarch Mu sneered. Before she could speak, Fifth Miss Mu Rockin coldly said, "Grandpa, father, you don't have to do anything to humiliate the Mu family for me. What's there to be afraid of in death?" Mu Rockin coldly said, "It's just slap." Before she could finish speaking, she received a heavy slap to the face. Mu Rockin's father, fourth son Mu Jingxiao's eyes instantly reddened. "What are you doing?" Mu Qingya sobbed softly and looked at Matriarch Mu with tears in her eyes. "Mother, don't worry about us. The Mu family's talisman fragments can't be handed over, and the Mu family's dignity can't be lost. It's our honor to die for the Mu family." Slap. This time, the Heavenly Fate disciples who were grabbing the women became even angrier. One of them directly slapped Mu Qingya in the face and even tore the clothes on her shoulders. "We want to see just how tough the Mu family's mouth is. Such a delicate and fair madam, it's really embarrassing to reward her to us brothers." Ha 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 ha. Following the strange laughter, Mu Qingya's tears fell one by one, but she still tightly pursed her lips and put on an unyielding look. She lowered her head and refused to make a sound. "Qingya." Matriarch Mu's heart softened immediately. Qingya, this child, had been working hard for the Mu family for so many years. She had taken care of the family's affairs from top to bottom. Such a gentle and kind-hearted child, how could she bear to watch her suffer like this? Arbor suddenly sneered, "How long are you going to act? Acting every day, deceiving this and that. After deceiving so many people for so many years, I just want to ask you, is it tiring to live like this? See you tomorrow." Chapter 4069. The surroundings were silent, except for Arbor's faint questioning voice. There was no other sound. Inexplicably, many of the Mu family's disciples seemed to have even lightened their breathing a little. They could clearly feel that the little crown princess's mood was fluctuating like a violent storm. Although she still looked expressionless, the depths of her almond-shaped eyes had long been dyed with a roaring fury. Mu Qingya raised her head with tears in her eyes and looked at Arbor strangely. She looked around with a puzzled expression and put on an expression that said, "Are you talking to me?" Clap. 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 Arbor's little face was expressionless as she clapped hard. "I was too naive. I didn't know there was someone with such superb acting skills in this world." In the most prosperous opera house in the imperial capital, the most famous entertainer's acting ability is not even 100,000th of first madam's. The first time you ordered to clean up the Mu family, you didn't get the talisman remnant scroll. You were very unwilling, right? It's only been a few days, and now there's another wave. Arbor shook her little head and stared at Mu Qingya indifferently. Do you think this crown princess can't do anything to that Mammy Wang who killed herself by swallowing poison? With a wave of her little hand, she grabbed a faint remnant soul in her hand and tossed it around casually. Does First Madam still know this person? The Mu family disciples looked in Mu Qingya's direction in bewilderment. What was going on? According to the Crown Prince Consort's meaning, the Mu family's calamity this time was actually First Madam ordered to come to the Mu family to search for the talisman remnant scroll. Who was First Madam? Who could she order? The group of people who broke into the Mu family's old residence were all members of the Tianyun cult. Could it be that First Madam? Everyone's eyes involuntarily shrank, including Old Master Mu Tsang, and they all looked in First Madam Mu's direction in disbelief. Mu Qingya couldn't help but turn pale and her body swayed. Jojo, what do you mean? Do you think that a weak woman like me can give any orders? Everyone came back to their senses when they heard this. That's right, First Madam was just an ordinary person. She was just an ordinary housewife. Who could she give orders to in Tianyun? What ability did she have to do such a thing? Just thinking about it made it seem impossible. Could it be that the Crown Princess had misunderstood something? Or perhaps he had thought wrongly. The little Crown Princess applauded again and shook the remnant soul of Nanny Wang in her hand. This is your woman. First Madam. Don't tell me you don't know her. Mu Qingya looked at Arbor with a pitiful expression, and tears fell uncontrollably. Jojo, please believe me. I grew up in the Mu family, was born in the Mu family, was raised in the Mu family, and ate and used everything in the Mu family. The Mu family has treated me so well that I can't betray them. Matriarch Mu nodded and also persuaded, that's true. Jojo, what do you mean by that? First Madam's wife is just a weak housewife. What orders can she give and who can she order to do things? Husband. Arbor rolled his eyes, looking like he couldn't be bothered to say more to them. Mo Lien couldn't help but want to laugh. She walked up and held her little hand. Chapter 40-70. The little girl had said less than 3 sentences, but she already felt like she had said everything she wanted to say. It was really funny. Mo Lien turned to look at Madame Mu and said in a low voice, "Bring her here." Soon, an old nanny in green clothes was gagged. Her shoulders kept twisting as she was pushed and escorted over. Mu Qingya glanced at the old woman, but her expression didn't change at all. Her gaze toward Xiao Mu was still gentle and benevolent, but it also contained a bit of helplessness and bewilderment. It was as if an elder could unreasonably condone the younger generation's unreasonable behavior. She sighed softly. Nanny Chiu, who was beside her, glanced at the little crown princess but didn't say anything. The maid, Tsonglu, couldn't help but yell angrily, "Crown Princess, our madam is so good to you and always thinks of you. She doesn't dare to neglect you in anything. How can you do this? Can you just find 2 old maids who are not familiar with her to slander her? Since we brought them here, it means we have complete evidence." Aoyi kicked the nanny in the back of her knee, causing her to kneel on the ground in pain. She flopped and fell at Arbor's feet. Madame Mu should be very familiar with this Zhang Huilan. Aoyi smiled faintly and kicked the woman. "Madame Mu, why don't you take a closer look?" Madame Mu's expression was cold. She glanced at Nanny Zhang from the corner of her eyes and shook her head. "I don't know this person and I don't know what you're talking about." Arbor looked at her with a frosty expression for a long time before saying faintly, "You've already exposed your identity." Tianyun, Fei Tian, Hall Master, Mu Qingya. Xiao Mu tossed a confession certificate in front of her, allowing it to flutter to Mu Qingya's feet. What nonsense are you talking about? Song Lu was furious. She pointed at the sharp blade pressed against her neck. Don't you see what this is? Tian Yun's people broke into our Mu clan and captured us, but now you've stop acting. Mo Lian interrupted Song Lu's words and did not even look at the other party. He stared at Mu Qingya for a long time before nodding with a smile. The whole master of the Soaring Heavens Hall is indeed very capable. You didn't waste your years of painstaking effort and hiding in the Mu family. Zhang Huilan is the spy you placed in the Long family. I've always found it strange. When did the Long family branch in the imperial capital surrender to the Heavenly Fate Empire? So it turns out that everything is related to your operation. Mu Qingya looked at Mo Lian in astonishment. She tightly gripped the handkerchief in her hand, and with tears in her eyes, she asked in confusion, Your Highness, why do you say that? Stop pretending. Xiao Mu was so disgusted by her that she abruptly pulled her husband behind her. She glared at Mu Qingya in disdain and said, Don't use your little white face to look at Xiao Xiao's lotus. It's disgusting. Nanny Qiu supported Mu Qingya, who was on the verge of collapsing, and said in a low voice, Crown Princess, please be careful with your words. Ever since you returned to the Mu clan in the Divine Province, ask yourself honestly, has Madame Mu ever mistreated you? Madame Mu treats your mother with the utmost sincerity. Even biological sisters can't be better. Nanny Qiu said coldly. Chapter 4071. Do you know that First Madam even used the Yanxing technique to curse Long Shouxin, the head of the Long family, for your mother's sake? How could she be the head of the Tianyun Hall? How could she help the Long family escape from the capital? Crown Princess, you have a deep misunderstanding about First Madam, Nanny Qiu said in a deep voice. I know that I can't explain it to you in a short time. But please believe in one thing, First Madam absolutely has no ill intentions towards your deceased mother and you. Keep pretending, keep pretending. Arbor's lips curved slightly, as if there was a crack at the corner of his mouth, and he smiled eerily. Mu Qingya, why don't we put all the things you've done one by one? Let's start with Shi Huixin being your scapegoat. What do you think? First Madam Mu slowly raised her head, looking as gentle as ever. Although there was a knife on her neck, half of the clothes on her shoulders were torn, and her hair was a little messy, her eyes were clear. She still looked like the calm First Madam who was standing in the back hall of the Mu family's courtyard, and the madam in charge of the whole family. Arbor's eyes flickered, and he couldn't help but applaud her elegant demeanor. Mu Qingya, you probably didn't expect that a little girl from a small village in the Lower Star region would be out of your control. When you found out, you suddenly felt that everything was out of control and deviated from the original track. There was no way to set things right. Arbor tilted his head, and there was a hint of a smile in his eyes. He looked at her and said word by word, I, Arbor, have returned to the Divine Land. The disciples of the Mu family fixed their eyes on the little crown princess and stared at her deeply. For a moment, they felt speechless. You've been scheming against me since the first day I set foot in the Divine Land. It's not what you think. Xiao Xiao, you truly have a deep misunderstanding about me. Mu Qingya wiped the corners of her eyes with a handkerchief. She wanted to explain herself, but Xiao Mu cut her off. I didn't misunderstand you. When I learned that you were the Hall Master of the Heavenly Fortune Soaring Heavens Hall, who I've only heard of but never seen in person, I was shocked. Xiao Mu turned around and suddenly smiled sweetly at Mu Qingya. Her smile was unhurried, like a snow jade lotus that had suddenly bloomed. It was cold and exquisite, making it nearly impossible for people to avert their eyes. I went through all the things in my heart. Mu Qingya pointed at her heart and said slowly, You're really amazing. I've suspected you more than once. But every time, you managed to escape successfully. You gave me the feeling that you're a perfect person. Gentle, skilled, noble, and even flawless. Yuchinya, Mu Chinya's SS heart. Mu Chinya looked at her with tears in her eyes. Tears fell one after another, and she reached out to cover her heart. She's. You and I both know Shi Huixin's identity very well. Xiao Mu gazed at her deeply. The probability of pulling off so many petty tricks under the nose of the matriarch of the household who has been managing the Mu clan for so many years is practically zero. Chapter 4072. Shi Huixin could actually bring that fake Qiao Yingchen back to the Mu family. This can only mean one thing. Arbor looked at Mu Qingya expressionlessly. You knew. You knew from the beginning. No, you should know very well whether it was true or not. Arbor looked at her silently and stared at her deeply. From the beginning, Shi Huixin was just a small chess piece in your hand. It was you who wanted to ruin this old consort's reputation. It was you who manipulated that fake Qiao Yingchen behind the scenes and let her enter the Mu family smoothly. You even arranged for her to step into the social circle of the nobles. Her pitch-black eyes fell into the depths of Mu Qingya's rippling eyes. They swayed like two crescents of clear spring water, chilling to the bone. At that moment, she seemed to see that person in the little girl. Cold, elegant, and incomparably arrogant. She humbly crawled at the feet of that person and listened to others telling her that this was the eldest miss of the Long family and the future mistress of the Mu family. That woman's clear and frosty eyes fell on her. At that moment, she felt as if she had fallen into the depths of the dust, so weak that she was even less than an ant. To be honest, she really hated this feeling of having to kneel and look up to others. She hated it very, very much. Mu Qingya's memory flowed slowly with the waves and finally stopped at a certain point. Nanny Chiu bowed to her and whispered, "Madam, concubine Shi has already brought her here according to our arrangements." Madame Mu curled her lips and revealed a faint light in the corners of her eyes. Tomorrow, at the banquet at General Zhongli's residence, Mu Qingya stroked a soft strand of hair by her temples. "I'm not feeling well tomorrow." "Yes, madam." Nanny Chiu smiled faintly and bowed 2 steps back. "Then tomorrow, let that idiot take that fake to General Zhongli's residence to meet the nobles in the imperial court." Mu Qingya nodded faintly and said softly, "That's good." Mu Qingya looked at the arbor in front of her indifferently. She was lost in thought for a long time and didn't say anything. Her eyes revealed a faint sigh and a faint sadness. "All of this is just your guess," Mrs. Mu said softly. "How can you prove that I did such a thing? Jojo, if I do this, what good will it do for me? Child, it's not good for your health to think too much." Arbor ignored her and continued, "After that, I returned to the Mu family. On the surface, you seem to take care of everything and treat me and the crown prince respectfully. Do you need me to remind you of what you did behind my back?" "What did I do?" Mu Qingya looked at Arbor innocently and couldn't help but laugh at herself. "I didn't do anything, okay? That Xiao Xing is one of your people." Arbor coldly said, "As soon as I entered the Mu family, you started to make things difficult for me." "Crown Princess." Mu Qingya looked helpless. "I really didn't know that you still remember Xiao Xing's matter." "Of course I remember. She even turned into a zombie. She turned into a zombie and almost attacked my people." Mu Jingfeng. Arbor pointed at the dumbstruck Mu Jingfeng. "Mu Jingfeng even tried his best to absolve you, saying that this matter had nothing to do with you." Chapter 4073. But how did a perfectly fine person suddenly turn into a corpse in the woodshed? There's no need to say how many improved potions the Hall Master of Tian Yun's Soaring Heavens Hall has, right? Is what she said true? Mu Jingfeng finally regained his senses. His hair was disheveled and covered in blood as he stared at Mu Qingya, who had a knife at her neck. Is what she said true? Of course not. Mu Qingya let out a long sigh. I'm just a weak woman. How can I be the Hall Master of the Heavenly Fortune Club? Jingfeng, we've been husband and wife for so many years. I do hate you for forcing me against my will back then, but all these years, what I've done for you, what I've done for the entire Mu family, what I've sacrificed over 10 years of my youth, what I've done for this family, can't you see it? As Mu Qingya spoke, her eyes flickered with tears, as if she had suffered a great grievance. Her expression was abnormally miserable. However, Mu Jingfeng took a step back and glanced at her with a trembling gaze. He realized that he really couldn't understand this wife of his who had shared a bed with him for so many years. Old master, old madam. Mu Qingya looked at the two elders with tears in her eyes. Even you two believe it. You believe that I'm a member of that evil cult. You believe that I, Mu Qingya, have done anything to let down the Mu family. Old madam heaved a long sigh, and her gaze swept toward Xiao Mu. Xiao, is there a misunderstanding? There's no misunderstanding, Arbor said indifferently. She had never thought that these people from the Mu family would stand by her side, nor did she think that someone from the Mu family would be able to stand by her side. But no matter what, right was right, and wrong was wrong. Since she already knew this woman's true colors, how could she not expose her? Mu Qingya, you've indeed pretended very well. You've deceived so many people for so many years. Today, regardless of whether anyone believes me or not, you won't be able to escape death. Arbor said coldly as he looked at her with a sharp gaze. Eldest miss. I believe you. Suddenly, a Mu family disciple with a bandage on his arm spoke up. Eldest young miss, I also believe in you. Another Mu clan disciple nodded heavily and said. There's no need for eldest miss to lie to us. Yes. Eldest miss risked her life to save our Mu family, there's no need for her to lie to us. Ma Shiqin raised her eyebrows slightly and revealed a faint smile. It seemed that these younger generation Mu family disciples were not stupid to the point of being incurable. Mu Xingchen turned to look at his younger sister, then at the group of youths from the Mu family who were still in high spirits even though they were covered in injuries. He couldn't help but reveal a faint smile. Arbor turned around expressionlessly and looked at Mu Qingya. After little Xing turned into a zombie, you cooperated with Nia Yaoguang to spread rumors. They said that monsters appeared in the Mu clan because the crown princess, the source of the disaster, had returned to the divine land. Mu Qingya turned her head slightly and looked coldly at the little crown princess. It's a pity that this rumor was suppressed by me before it could spread. Your plan failed again. Arbor looked coldly at Mu Qingya. After that, you also know what happened to Juxian and Mei Xian. Chapter 4074. There's no need to deny it. In fact, you've contributed a lot to the entire Mu family all these years. You've taken care of the Mu family from top to bottom, and the entire Mu family's affairs are in your hands. How could you not know the movements of the two girls? Those two girls who wanted to climb into your bed were nominally sent by concubine Sure. But in fact you were the one who added fuel to the fire and watched coldly from the sidelines. You can't get away with all this. But in the end, after the incident, the one who was punished was concubine Sure, who took the blame for you. Sure Huixin is really miserable. Arbor said coldly, from the beginning to the end, she was a chess piece in your hands. She played wherever you wanted her to play. In the end, she was killed by your vicious rotting talisman from a distance. Mu Jingfeng, this fool, even accused me of killing her. How could he know that there should be a talisman hall in Tianyun? I've dealt with a lot of people in your hall. For example, that black cat master. He's from your subordinate Clear Sky sect. In fact, he should be from Tianyun's talisman hall. Mu Qingya looked at Arbor with a smile in her eyes. For a long time, she just looked at her with a smile on her lips. Her eyes were calm, as if at this moment, she hadn't revealed the little girl's hidden identity. Kaidai Pavilion, Xinhua Workshop, and Despondent Pavilion are all properties left to me by my mother. Is it wrong for me to take them back? Arbor looked at Mu Qingya. That's my mother's dowry. It's my mother's things. It's mine. Mu Qingya's smiling eyes gradually turned cold, and her lips curled into a faint sneer. You were dissatisfied, but you had no choice but to give the property to me. So you sent people to Kaidai Pavilion and set fire to people. You secretly forged my handwriting and tricked Saishio into taking the poison letter to Kaidai Pavilion. Even if the fire didn't kill people, the poison would have ruined Kaidai Pavilion's reputation and made my reputation notorious. But I suddenly came back from the academy. I took control of the situation and made your scheme fail again. You actually hate me for messing up all your plans. Although I came back in time to deal with the Kaidai Pavilion matter, Kai Xiao was injured. The 8 members of the Zhang clan were instigated by you to cause trouble. Although they are detestable, they don't deserve to die. 8 lives were lost just like that in the prison. I admit that you won that time. You're really amazing. The little crown princess walked towards her and stood 3 steps away from her. She looked at her indifferently. I have suspected you 3 times. All 3 times, nothing happened. Can you tell me the truth now? I'm really curious. Arbor looked at her and said, I don't know what I've done to offend you that you can send people after me again and again. Time and time again, you want me to feel like I'm in hell, living a miserable life. In this life, you have no hope of fulfilling your wish. Because you have already fulfilled it in your previous life. Why? Mu Qingya tilted her head slightly, and her cold eyes became colder and colder. Suddenly, her fingers twitched, and she lightly pushed aside the knife against her neck. She then gave Qiao Mu an extremely faint smile. Do you want to know? You'll never know in this life, Mu Qingya said coldly. Protect the Hall Master. Granny Qiu shouted. Chapter 4075. The disciples of the Heavenly Fate sect rushed toward Arbor and tried their best to protect Mu Qingya and the others as they retreated. From the looks of it, they probably didn't care about anything else and wanted to retreat immediately. Song Lu stood in place in shock, as if she hadn't recovered from the shock of Madam is the leader of the Heavenly Fate sect, and was pushed to the ground. Before she could stand up, she was stepped on by the disciples of the Heavenly Fate sect. Holding her broken arm, she cried out in pain. The disciples of the Heavenly Fate sect carried the pale-faced Mrs. Hua, Mu Rochin, and the others and retreated as they fought. Countless rays of spiritual qi of various colors collided in the air, making buzzing sounds. Arbor looked coldly at the disciples of the Heavenly Fate sect who were holding other people's families hostage. With a wave of his hand, countless arrows flew down from the roof. The arrows were accurate and powerful. Each arrow pierced through the neck of a disciple of the Heavenly Fate sect, knocking them to the ground and killing them instantly. Mu Qingya said coldly, use them as shields. Mrs. Hua was horrified to find that she had been lifted up in the air, blocking the heads of Mu Qingya and the others. If there were arrows flying down from the sky, they would definitely turn her into a hornet's nest. Mother! Mother! The young masters of the 5th branch were so anxious that they jumped up and raised their swords to charge forward, but they were stopped by the disciples of the Heavenly Fate sect in the front row. Crown Princess, Mu Qingya said coldly. Mu Qingya said coldly, you don't care about the lives of 20 to 30 women here. Let us leave this place in exchange for these people's lives. Mu Qingya said calmly and elegantly. She didn't have the feeling that she was forced into a desperate situation and had no way out. Even at this very moment, her identity had already been exposed and she was seen clearly from head to toe. She still acted like an elegant and dignified madam. She was calm, and her eyes were cold and indifferent. She didn't give off the slightest feeling of being seen through. She was so calm that Mo Lian and the others couldn't help but look at her in a new light. For an ordinary woman to become the leader of the Heavenly Fate sect, it was definitely not due to luck. She was capable. In fact, except for the fact that this woman had no cultivation, her mind, judgment, and even vision were very shrewd and unique, far better than those women raised in boudoirs. Let them go, Arbor said coldly. Mu Qingya sneered. Do you think I'm a fool? Now that I've released her, I'll let you do whatever you want without any cover. You don't have a choice. The young crown prince consort's icy voice weighed down on everyone present, causing their hearts to sink. If I can't live, then why should I listen to you? Mu Qingya sneered and pressed the dagger in her hand against Madame Wu's neck. All of you, back off. Retreat to the middle court. Now. Arbor's voice to the Heavenly Fate sect, to the heavens to her to the ground twos to head to the Heavenly Fate sect. Madam, sex to kill, sex to kills, I've said it before. Today, all of you will die here. Arbor interrupted sex words indifferently and said word by word, no one can leave unscathed after disturbing my mother's sleep. Mu Qingya, who had been as calm as ever, finally cracked her expression. Are you really so ruthless and decisive? You don't care about their lives at all. Chapter 4076. Arbor raised her eyebrows and sneered. You think they can keep their lives after you take them away? Are you naive, or do you think I'm naive? Xiao Mu's small hand that she had raised clenched slightly. The people that you have captured will either become targets for you to blackmail the Mu clan within the future or be modified for your own use. Are you stupid or do you think I don't know what you're planning? Arbor put down her little hand and said sternly, shoot. Everyone from the Heavenly Fate realm will die here today. Don't leave a single one alive. Mu Qingya's eyes narrowed, and anger finally appeared in her cold eyes. Protect the Hall Master and retreat. Nanny Chio's roar shook the sky. She used a silver hook to deflect the arrows that were flying toward her. She was about to grab a girl from the Mu family and place her in front of Mu Qingya. Just as she was about to grab a girl from the Mu family, a shrill cry came from the sky. Chio Mama immediately felt a tearing pain in her arm. She looked down and saw that Qing Wan had torn her hand apart with a claw and directly took the miss of the Mu family, who she was pulling, away from the battle. At the same time, 3 phoenixes flew out of the sky. Yes, there were 3 phoenixes. Everyone looked up with a dumbfounded expression. A red, a purple, and a black bird flapped their wings rapidly and swooped down from the sky, scattering the crowd of heavenly kismet cultivators who had gathered together. Madame Hua, Mu Rochin, and the others were caught by the claws of 2 phoenixes. With a rip, a small piece of their sleeve was torn and they were pulled away from the others. Mu Qingya's eyes instantly darkened, and she angrily rebuked, "Don't panic, don't mess up the formation, and hold on tight, Screech." In the blink of an eye, the blazing blood phoenix flapped its wings and spat out a line of fire towards the feet of the Heavenly Fate disciples. Nanny Chio grabbed Mu Qingya's arm. Ignoring the fact that her hand was still bleeding, she pulled Mu Qingya 2 steps back and kicked away Tsong Lu, who was standing in front of her. Then, she quickly retreated. Nanny Chio, Madam. Madam. Tsong Lu's face was full of fear. He struggled to get up from the ground and limped forward 2 steps. Suddenly, an arrow pierced through his heart. With a face full of pain and despair, he stretched out his hand in the direction of the 2 people leaving and fell heavily to the ground. She probably never thought that she would die like this. Her eyes were wide open, revealing a hint of unwillingness. Nanny Cho didn't even have time to look at Song Lu. She just shouted, "Protect the Hall Master and retreat." Beside her, Thorny Rose also recovered from her shock. She swept a glance at Mu Qingya and indifferently curled her lips. She grabbed Mu Jingfeng, who was still in a daze, and giggled. "What, are you dumbfounded? Why aren't you leaving? Are you waiting for them to counterattack?" Now she could see that the little girl was really capable. No matter if it was the divine bird Qing Wan or the 3 divine phoenix beasts, it was already an amazing thing for an ordinary cultivator to have one of them, let alone this girl actually had 4 of them. Not any random shouja could contend against him. Without absolute strength and wealth, Tisk, wanting to kill this little girl was probably a fool's dream. Chapter 4077. Not to mention Mu Qingya, who didn't have any cultivation. Even if the hall masters of other halls were here, they would definitely suffer in the hands of this little girl. So a wise man submits to circumstances. It was best to leave quickly and avoid suffering such a great loss. Tao Wei quickly retreated with her people. Although the ordinary Heavenly Fate disciples were all quite strong, how could they be a match for the well-trained Hades court guards? After shooting a round of arrows from the tall building, they immediately jumped down from the roof in perfect coordination and directly engaged in a purge of the Heavenly Fate disciples. The 4 divine beasts, Qing Wan, Hu Feng, and the other 3 divine beasts, were even faster in their rescue operation. In a matter of minutes, they rescued more than 20 female members of the Mu clan who were originally held captive by the Heavenly Fate disciples. After Mu Rakin was rescued, her snow-white little face was as pale as a sheet of paper. While Mu Yuanyuan and Mu Lixiang were fighting the enemies, they quickly moved to her side and held her up. They asked with concern, "Rakin, how are you?" I'm fine." Although Mu Ro-Chin and 5th Madam were a little frightened, their complexions were a little unsightly, and their bodies were more or less injured, compared to the scene they had imagined in their hearts that they would die here today. These small injuries were nothing. "You, go kill the enemies. Don't worry about us," Mu Rakin hurriedly said. They really had to thank the little crown princess for today's matter. Although the little crown princess looked cold and emotionless on the surface, she had already ordered Qing Wan and Hu Feng to rescue them when she gave the order to shoot the arrows. The 2 sides fought fiercely. The Heavenly Fate disciples fell one by one under the counterattacks of the Mu clan disciples and the Hades court guards. Nanny Cho couldn't care too much at this time. Under the protection of a group of people, she protected Mu Qingya and retreated toward the back mountain gate of the Mu clan. Nanny Cho. Mu Qingya held her blood-stained arm and her eyes moved slightly. "I'm fine, madam." Nanny Cho's face was cold as she said in a deep voice, "These small injuries won't take this old servant's life. Let this old servant escort madam out of here first. If there's anything, let's talk outside." Mu Qingya turned her head and looked out of the crowd. With this glance, she accurately caught the cold gaze of the little crown princess. Between the 2 of them were countless Mu clan and Heavenly Fate sect disciples who were fighting with all their might. Both sides were fighting very fiercely. However, the young crown prince consort wasn't affected by all this commotion. She stood outside the crowd, her eyes sparkling like snow. Staring at her, Mu Qingya fell into a trance for a moment, as if the little girl was rarely emotional. Just like now, he was coldly looking at you without saying a word. His eyes were incomparably focused. It made one's hair stand on end, and it climbed up from the bottom of their hearts. "You can't escape." Mu Qingya read these words from her cold eyes. The little girl raised her left hand, and a longbow made of ice and snow suddenly fell into her small hand. His eyes were still fixed on Mu Qingya. Drawing the bow and pulling the arrow only took a breath. The profound ice arrow whizzed through the night sky and flew against the wind, suddenly shooting toward Mu Qingya. Go! Mu Qingya was greatly shocked. She grabbed Nanny Chio's hand and shouted, "Madam! Get out of the way!" Nanny Chio's old face suddenly flushed red. Chapter 4078. Whoosh! The sound of the arrow piercing through the air broke through the thick night. This arrow seemed to have pierced through the crescent moon in the sky, carrying with it a desolate and austere intent. With a trace of terrifying fury, it shot in front of Mu Qingya like a clap of thunder. There was nowhere left to hide. Granny Chio pushed Mu Qingya away, her face ashen. She gathered all of her divine power into her arm as fast as she could. A ray of red light shot out from her palm. Flames danced, and her divine power was released, bringing with it a brilliant light in the dark night. Everyone saw the red light form an oval-shaped protective shield, which rushed towards the little girl's arrow. The enchanting red light and the bright silver light collided in a matter of minutes. The little girl's arrow scattered silver-white snowflakes in the air. It pierced through the opponent's protective shield at an extremely fast speed, and it continued to advance without any intention of stopping. All of the Mu family disciples couldn't help but hold their breaths. They saw their eldest Miss Arrow instantly break through Granny Chio's oval-shaped protective shield. It didn't seem to be exhausted at all, and it shot through the old woman's chest at a speed comparable to that of light. Pfft! Granny Chio spat out a mouthful of blood. The entire place was in an uproar, accompanied by the thunderous roars of all the youths of the Dark Court guards. "Crown Princess! Crown Princess! Crown Princess!" Prince Mo smirked, and his gaze landed on Arbor with a smile. The little girl looked at Mu Qingya and the others expressionlessly. She raised her hand slightly, and said calmly, "Disciples of the Heavenly Providence go against the heavens. Everyone has the right to punish them. Everyone has the responsibility to eradicate the Heavenly Providence. Eradicate the Heavenly Providence. Madam, let's go. Madam, let's go." Granny Chio pushed Mu Qingya forcefully. In front of them, Thorny Rose had already quickly opened the teleportation talisman formation and stepped into it. Granny Chio used her last breath to slap Mu Qingya's back and send her into the formation. Arbor's eyes were cold and merciless. With a flick of her finger, countless attack talismans flew out of her small hand and merged into the light and shadow of the teleportation talisman array. Although the transportation glyph array had quickly brought Thorny Rose, Mu Jingfeng, and Mu Qingya away, everyone could still hear several howls of anguish that varied in intensity. Presumably, the people in the formation were more or less injured. Arbor looked coldly in the direction they left and spat out a word, "Chase." Prince Mo's figure flashed and lifted the dying Nanny Chio. Without waiting for him to speak, Mama Chio coldly stared at him. Her neck moved slightly, and her head suddenly drooped down. Mo Lian looked down and saw a smear of black blood dripping from the old woman's mouth. It was obvious that she had taken poison to commit suicide. "What a loyal and unruly old servant," Arbor coldly said. Then, she took out a soul-summoning talisman and lifted the old woman's soul out without another word. After Nanny Chio's faint soul was lifted out, she couldn't help but shiver when she saw the cold and lonely little girl in front of her. At this time, she was still a bit confused. Seeing Arbor standing in front of her, she was a bit confused. Was she alive or dead? "I'll let you see what will happen to the madam you wholeheartedly protected," Arbor coldly said. "The person I, Arbor, want to kill won't live for long. You definitely won't be able to protect her." Chapter 4079. The little girl's fingers tightened around Granny Chio's soul. Her eyes were like thousand-year-old ice, cold and distant. Don't worry. I won't let her die so easily. After all, she owes me. I'm afraid she won't be able to repay me in this lifetime. The little girl stared coldly at Granny Chio in her hand and said coldly, in this lifetime, I want her to beg for death. At this moment, the Heavenly Fate's sex disciples had all been eliminated. Only the Mu family's disciples and the Nether Court guards were left. Everyone was silent. Only the little girl's cold and resolute voice sounded in their ears. It was bone-chilling and indifferent. The pitch-black flames rose behind them and swept away the corpses of the Heavenly Fate's sex disciples. Even the souls of the Heavenly Fate's sex disciples were burned clean. Not even their bones were left. Arbor shot out several teleportation talisman arrays. Holding Mo Lien's hand, he led the group of Nether Court guards and disappeared in front of everyone. The heaven-level teleportation talisman array could teleport up to 500 people at a time. The distance was up to 500 kilometers. One of the Mu family's disciples gritted his teeth and rushed into the teleportation talisman array with his sword. Soon after, 2, 3, 100, 300, 500 Mu family disciples followed in batches and ran over. Mu Xingqian's eyes flickered. He looked back and exchanged glances with the old master. Then, he quickly followed. Although the old master was also in a sorry state and covered in blood, there was an indescribable joy in his expression. He watched as the Mu family's juniors rushed into the talisman array without fear of death. The old master suddenly burst into laughter. The great elder, the second elder, and the others beside him also laughed. Although each of them had more or less wounds on their bodies, they were barely holding on at this time. Their bodies were extremely exhausted. However, they had never felt so happy before. There was no other reason. After this battle, the entire Mu family seemed to have been twisted into a rope. Their cohesiveness had reached an unprecedented level that had never been seen before. Whether it was the old master or the elders, they were all very clear. It was the little girl who brought these people together again. It was the little crown princess who reignited the fighting spirit of the Mu family. It reignited the courage and bravery in their bones. Just now, they hadn't said a word, but had followed the figure of the little crown princess as she left. They were all in a sorry state, so tired that they might not even be able to lift their swords. However, the old master and the elders had never felt that the Mu family's juniors were extremely pleasing to the eye like today. Their backs were straight, and their eyes were unwavering. They looked like the descendants of the Mu family. The second elder's smile pulled at the wound at the corner of his mouth. He grimaced in pain and sighed, I finally understand why ancestor Zhaoyang must rely on this little girl to be the patriarch. The ancestor was indeed the ancestor. His eyes were indeed sharp and experienced. This was because he had long seen that the Mu family really had to let the young lady be the person in charge in order to restore its former glory and splendor. Only eldest Miss could bear such a heavy responsibility and shoulder the faith and hope of the entire family. At this point, it could be said that the entire Mu family was wholeheartedly convinced by the little stoic. The little stoic naturally didn't know about this change. When she, her husband, and Xingqian led the underworld court guards out of the transportation talisman array, they immediately turned around and gazed coldly behind them. They're here. The little stoic's lips curled into a sneer. Chapter 4080. Did they think they could slip away from a heaven-grade great talisman master with a transportation talisman formation? Too naive. If it were her in the past, perhaps she really wouldn't have been able to do anything to them. But now, Lord Jojo was already a heaven-grade great talisman master. He knew the flow of talisman power, the control of talisman power, and the depth of talisman power like the back of his hand. She knew what talisman the other party used, how much talisman power they had, the approximate location of the transportation, and the distance. After calculating the distance and space, he led all the Dark Court guards to wait for Mu Qingya and the others at the outskirts. Sure enough, with a flash of light, Thorny Rose was the first to fall out of the transportation talisman formation, spitting out a mouthful of blood. It was obvious that the wave of attack talismans from earlier had caused a series of commotion in the narrow transportation space after falling into the formation, causing everyone to be heavily injured. Arbor stood there with cold eyes and looked at Mu Qingya from a distance. Mu Qingya was sent into the formation by Nanny Chio's palm strike and was also shaken by the attack talismans. She was obviously injured. But the problem was, her complexion actually looked better than Thorny Rose's. Arbor looked her up and down a few times before nodding and saying, as expected of Soaring Heavens Hall's Hallmaster. Even though you don't have cultivation, you still have a lot of defensive talismans and defensive spirit artifacts on you. Mu Qingya covered a bloody wound on her arm and calmly looked up at Arbor. She sighed softly and said, "Jojo, you are indeed powerful." Arbor nodded again. "If I wasn't powerful, I would have been killed by the Clear Sky sect people you sent on Sikong Planet. I really didn't expect that a woman like you could make Shantian Prefecture's prefecture lord, Gung Pengcheng, so devoted to you." Arbor looked her up and down curiously. "You are a woman without cultivation. What right do you have to do this?" "I am also very curious." "It's good for people to be curious." Mu Qingya smiled faintly. Her expression was distant. But a person's curiosity may not always be satisfied by others. Arbor sneered. "When Rowan has been scheming against me and my family since the beginning. Unfortunately, he didn't succeed. After that, Priest Dayu, Fan Choha, Fan Gu, the three dwarf brothers, let me think, an old monkey, brother too, Tan Fa from the Clear Sky sect, there are too many." Arbor sighed. "Look, how many people did you send to deal with me, and what did you get in the end?" "Nothing. You can't deal with me at all." At least in her life, she had never suffered a big loss in the hands of Mu Qingya. Could this be attributed to the misery of his previous life? So that she could gain experience in dealing with enemies? Arbor raised his eyebrows in self-mockery. His eyes flickered, and there was a hint of loneliness in them. "Why? There aren't so many whys in this world." Mu Qingya sighed. "Just like you. I also want to know why you seem to be blessed by God. You seem to be able to see through my intentions, my actions, and the people I send every time. They seem to be useless to you." Arbor was taken aback. A faint, cold, and desolate smile slowly blossomed on his lips. "What you said makes some sense. Who doesn't have a little bit of secret on them?" Mu Qingya. "Although you have no cultivation, you have a special ability, right? I'm so sleepy that I want to smash my computer." Chapter 4081. Mu Qingya smiled faintly at the little girl and said faintly, "I'm really curious about you now. Look at you. You're just a little girl. How can you be so capable? You're indeed not an ordinary person." Mu Qingya smiled and raised her hand to tidy up her slightly messy hair. "When you returned to the Mu family, I couldn't make you disappear from the family immediately. From then on, I lost. At that time, you asked me for the management rights of the Kaidai Pavilion, the Despondent Pavilion, and the Precious Painting Workshop. Of course, you didn't do anything wrong. These were originally your mother's businesses. But was I wrong? All these years, I've been taking care of those shops. I made them prosper, and that's why they're where they are today. You're great. The moment you came back, you stretched out your hand and completely overruled all my efforts over the years. Tell me, How annoying are you, child? Mu Qingya sighed softly and slowly pushed away the two heavenly fate disciples who were protecting her. Although I'm unwilling, I can only give them away. I originally thought that there would be a process for you to take over these businesses, and it would be chaotic for a while. But I didn't expect that you would really make me look at you in a different light. You've done well. You've managed the businesses left behind by your mother in an orderly manner. Because of the existence of the holy rice and the beautifying pill, they're even more popular than when I was managing them before. You cultivators are so unscrupulous. Mu Qingya let out a long sigh, a trace of helplessness appearing between her brows. No matter how hard an ordinary person tries to catch up, no matter how hard they work, you only need to use a little trick to leave us far behind, and we'll never see the end of it. I'm just wondering if you're really that lucky. If I use a little trick, will you be unlucky? Ha ha ha. Mu Qingya suddenly laughed. Her laughter was gentle and sweet, and a faint light flowed in the bottom of her eyes. It's a pity that Nanny Zhang found a group of idiots and failed to bring you down. I have to send Nanny Qiu to deal with the aftermath personally. When the Crown Princess took over the Kaidai veranda, not only did she manage the business well, she even made the reputation of the Kaidai veranda and the precious painting workshop soar in just a few days. What does that mean? Mu Qingya laughed at herself. It means that you're far more capable than me. To think that I boasted about being smart all my life, but I didn't expect that in the end, I couldn't even defeat a little girl. Are you really someone from this era? Mu Qingya's gaze was focused as she stared at Xiao Mu. She took a step forward, her long plain dress swaying slightly in the wind. Could it be that I made a mistake from the start? Mu Qingya looked deeply at the young lady in front of her. Her words were long and leisurely, with a hint of softness at the end. Crown Princess, where did you come from? Me. The little Crown Princess looked at her with an indifferent expression. Her gaze was extremely cold, as if she was looking at a cold corpse. I'm a malicious spirit that climbed up from a mountain of corpses, a sea of blood, and the depths of hell. I'm here specifically to take your life. Even though Mu Qingya was bold and meticulous, her heart still trembled in fright at the young Crown Prince Consort's unperturbed and cold expression. Ha 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 ha. Mu Qingya suddenly laughed out loud. Chapter 4082. Pursing her red lips, Mu Qingya looked at Arbor and nodded with a smile. She stretched out a slender finger and pointed in Arbor's direction. Crown Princess, you're definitely the most interesting person I've ever seen in my life. You're also very interesting, Arbor said coldly. Your special ability is in your eyes, right? The little Crown Princess stretched out her finger and drew a curve in front of her eyes. Your eyes can monitor me from afar, right? Isn't that right? Why do you say that, Crown Princess? That day, I put the magic eye on you. You knew that I was already suspecting you, Arbor said indifferently. You deliberately put on a show to confuse me. It was that show where you pretended to worship my mother in the secret chamber and cursed the dragon to keep his promise. It made me feel that you should be standing by my side. Mu Qingya smiled but didn't say anything. The scene of that day flashed through his mind. When she activated her special ability and found that the little girl had thrown a magic eye on her to monitor her, she already had a plan in mind. At that time, she patted Nanny Qiu's hand and drew the word memorial on her palm. Nanny Qiu had worked with her for many years, and they had worked together many times in the sacrificial scene for Long Chuyun. Naturally, she could understand what she meant immediately. Thus, Nanny Qiu immediately cooperated with her and put on another sacrificial scene. They worked well together and truly bewitched the little Crown Princess. When they went out, the maid who splashed the water had been arranged early in the morning. The magic eye was naturally useless when it got wet. After changing out of the wet clothes and burning them, they could safely survive this crisis. Mu Qingya was very attentive. After this incident, she became more respectful and obedient to the little crown princess. One couldn't find any fault with her at all. You're indeed very capable, very capable. Xiao Mu nodded dryly. But no matter how perfect a person is, they will still reveal their flaws in the end. No one is perfect. Arbor glanced at her and said, "Your attitude towards Mu Rochuan makes me very puzzled. If she could be so cruel to her own daughter, how could she be so attentive to the daughter of her good sister? You actually hate my mother, don't you?" "I didn't." "You do." Arbor interrupted her coldly. "My mother's talent is outstanding and her status is noble. You don't have these." "Ha." Mu Qingya couldn't help but sneer. "Do you think I'm such a shallow person? Would you hate her for a noble status and an illusory talent?" "Yes." The young crown prince consort nodded in full agreement. Mu Qingya's face instantly became twisted and ferocious. Everyone behind him was speechless. If they were Mu Qingya, they would probably be angered to death by the little crown princess's indifferent attitude. Unfortunately, these are all things you don't have. You should try very hard to get them, but in this lifetime it's probably impossible. "Shut up." Mu Qingya clenched her fists and yelled at him. "What do you know? Don't judge others rashly with a self-righteous tone. You did so much for your mother, and it's not wrong. But am I wrong? What's wrong with me? We're just in different positions. Actually, we're not wrong." Chapter 4083. Different Standpoints. Different Standpoints. Arbor snickered. Arbor, will not be like a mad dog that bites others for generations to come just because we have different standpoints. Ask yourself honestly. From Xikong Planet to Shantian Prefecture and then to the Divine Province. How many times have you dealt with me along the way? You instigated Shantian Prefecture's Prefecture Lord, Gung Pengcheng, to deal with me when I was 7 years old on Xikong Planet in the Lower Star Domain. You arranged for Wen Rowan to interfere with my life and my family's lives with the intention of controlling my life and wanting me to live a life worse than death. All of these schemes suddenly collapsed after I met Mo Lien and joined the Holy Water sect. You're done for. Xiao Mu held a black ferrule horizontally in her hand as she stared coldly at Mu Qingya. The countless pursuits and schemes that followed were merely because you wanted to make a comeback. You completely failed. You succeeded in your previous life. Arbor coldly looked at her. You can no longer control my life. You made me extremely miserable in my previous life. How I want to live and how I want to walk is entirely up to me to control my own future. How much blood and tears have I paid for this? In her previous life, she didn't even know that she was originally a daughter of the Mu family. She didn't know that this world was so vast. She also didn't know that her biological father's second wife used so many disgusting and despicable methods to deal with her, to prevent her from regaining her original identity and to prevent her from setting foot on the fertile land of the 3 provinces continents. Right now, she even suspected that this Mu Qingya was a psychopath with a twisted mind. Otherwise, how could she be so at ease and use so many schemes against a little girl who was only 7 years old? Just what kind of enmity and grievance did she have to hate her own mother, Long Chuyun, so much? You will never know. For a person who is used to freedom, equality, and openness, what kind of life is the most torturous? You won, Arbor. Mu Qingya heaved a sigh of relief. The winner takes all. I, Mu Qingya, have nothing to say. I'm just curious. You're a ghost from hell. How far can you go in this life? The icy snow mountain is bone-chilling. In the dim yellow sea of fire, the raging flames burn the heart. Crown Princess, isn't the future scary? I will accompany her no matter how far she goes. You don't have to worry. Mo Lien replied coldly. She moved slightly to Arbor's side and reached out to hold her bone-chilling hand. A sea of fire and a snow mountain, what is there to fear? If we work together, all difficulties will be easily solved. The little Crown Princess raised her head and looked into his smiling eyes. Her heart suddenly softened. He. Mu Qingya suddenly laughed heartily. She looked gently at Arbor and said, "Child, you're much luckier than your mother. I know. I know you hate me and want me to die right now. But I still have a lot of things to do. At least, I won't die today." Mu Qingya pursed her lips and smiled confidently. There are only a handful of heaven-level great talisman masters in the 3 provinces. You're really impressive. Mu Qingya sighed softly. Chapter 4084. Child, what do you think of this world? Mu Qingya raised her hands and pointed at the boundless sky, her gaze softly watching Arbor. Do you think that talent is predestined and that no one can change it? Are people born into noble families truly rich and powerful, and are favored by the heavens and earth? No. Mu Qingya looked at them firmly. Everything is possible in this world. Everything can be changed. This is the meaning of the heavenly fortune's existence. Since the heavenly Tao can't be fair, just, and free, then let us, the heavenly fortune, create these. We are ordinary people, but we weren't ordinary from birth. Mu Qingya faintly stared at the little Crown Princess and resolutely said, "What we don't have, we can create with our own hands. We can strive for it. Who said that we must be determined to struggle for survival at the lowest level of society our entire lives? What's there to be afraid of if we don't have status? We can create the heavenly fortune and let it rule this entire world. What's there to be afraid of if we don't have talent? We can create talent. Let ourselves become people above others. We don't need to be oppressed by the unfairness of this world anymore. The heavenly fortune is the hope of all of us ordinary and poor people. No matter how you noble family suppress it, how you exterminate it. What should rise will always rise. What should succeed will definitely succeed in the end. Qi La. After Mu Qingya finished speaking, she suddenly discovered that she, Thorn Wei, and Mu Jingfeng had constructed confinement talisman arrays around them. At this time, talisman power was slightly flowing, and if one's fingers accidentally touched it, they would be bounced back by a vast and mighty force, making chi-chi sounds. Arbor raised her eyebrows. She was really becoming more and more curious about this Mu Qingya now. In this kind of situation, Mu Qingya actually expressed her opinion at length, looking as if she had a card up her sleeve that she could definitely escape. What did she rely on? Was it years of planning and strategizing? Or was it her hot-bloodedness at this moment? Arbor clenched the ferrule in her hand, her cold eyes locking onto Mu Qingya. I've heard enough of your nonsense. Now, are you ready? Are you ready to die? Mu Qingya. Arbor leaped into the air with a whoosh, and a fierce gust of wind blew her clothes and hair up. Mu Qingya's expression remained unchanged, but beside her, Thorny rose and Mu Jingfeng's pupils could not help but shrink. Hall Master. Thorny Rose turned to look at Mu Qingya, cold sweat dripping down her forehead. Right now, they were surrounded by hundreds of underworld court guards and hundreds of Mu family disciples. With the young Crown Princess and His Highness the Crown Prince blocking the way in front and so many soldiers blocking the way behind, even if he used the transportation glyph formation again, he might not be able to escape the control of the young Crown Princess, a heaven-level great glyph master. Arbor, don't be too confident. Mu Qingya suddenly took something out of her sleeve. It was a jade talisman that was emitting a purple light. Suddenly, it broke through the confinement talisman formation around him and shot into the air, emitting a faint purple light. Xiao Mu narrowed her severe eyes as she stared icily at Mu Qingya. In an instant, a cloud-like staircase descended from the clouds, extending all the way to Mu Qingya. Stairway to Heaven Talisman. Arbor's gaze was slightly startled as he muttered. Then, he heard a gust of wind brushing past his ears. A pitch-black tongue of flame extended with the wind. Chapter 4085. In the blink of an eye, it engulfed the bodies of the Heavenly Fate sect disciples in front of them. After entering the confinement talisman array, it went straight for Mu Qingya, Mu Jingfeng, and Thorny Rose. At the critical moment, Mu Qingya climbed up the stairway to heaven with one hand. Her body was pulled along by the stairway to the extreme, and she dove into the clouds with a whoosh. At the same time, Thorny Rose and Mu Jingfeng also grabbed the stairway to heaven and escaped with Mu Qingya. However, they escaped quickly, and black fire chased after them very quickly. A spark burned up Mu Jingfeng's calf. Even though his figure disappeared into the clouds, everyone could still hear his miserable howl. Mo Lian slightly clenched her fists, and a faint trace of anger flashed through her eyes. She raised her hand, but Arbor raised his hand and pulled it down. Forget it. Don't chase. The little girl sighed. The God-tier talisman can send people into the air. They can be sent 2,000 kilometers away at a time. This is another rare purple talisman. I'm afraid it's more than 2,000 kilometers. Crown Princess, let's just forget about it, Yi said with a frown. Of course I can't just let it go like this. As Xiao Mu spoke, a cold glint flitted across her eyes. He turned to Prince Mo and said, prepare the troops. We'll wipe out the nearest nest in one fell swoop. The magical thing about the Stairway to Heaven talisman was that she could set a fixed location to return to. Arbor knew very well that the location Mu Qingya set must be the safest place she thought it would be. Without needing Arbor to say anything else, Prince Mo nodded in understanding. He turned back and whispered a few words to Aoyi before letting him lead the troops away in a hurry. Ah. Mu Jingfeng rolled down from the Stairway to Heaven talisman. He kept patting his left leg with his hand as he wailed in pain. Thorny Rose coldly glanced at him. She stepped forward and kicked him, exasperated at his failure to live up to her expectations. You piece of trash. You just stood up for a moment, and now you're kneeling again. You're simply wasting my improved medicine. Deputy Hall Master. Give me another bottle of medicinal liquid, Vice Hall Master. Right now, Mu Jingfeng only felt a scorching pain in his calf that spread to his heart. He was in so much pain that he couldn't help but hug his knees. He rolled back and forth on the ground until he reached Thorny Rose. Scram! Thorny Rose kicked her aside and turned to look at Mu Qingya, who was tugging at her clothes. The three of them were standing in front of a dilapidated temple on a hillside in the suburbs. Many disciples of the Heavenly Fate sect had already rushed out from under the ruined temple. When he saw Thorny Rose, he cupped his hands and bowed, Vice Hall Master. They didn't seem to know Mu Qingya, the Hall Master of the Soaring Heavens Hall. Their eyes were filled with vigilance and curiosity as they sized up the woman who was flinging her outer robe. Hall Master Mu, what are you doing? Thorny Rose speechlessly looked at Mu Qingya. In her heart, she actually looked down on this Hall Master who had no cultivation at all. But at least on the surface, he could not show the slightest bit of disdain. After all, this was someone who could casually take out a divine-ranked jade talisman. There was no need to doubt her identity. Mu Qingya turned around and pounced at Thorny Rose. She reached out to tear off her outer robe. Although her expression was calm, her tone was slightly hurried. Take off your outer robe. And his. Take it all off. Everyone, prepare to evacuate this stronghold. What are you still standing there for? Hurry up and do it. Chapter 4086. When Mu Qingya flung off her outer garment, an inconspicuous little black butterfly emerged from Mu Jingfeng's hair and flew up with a flap of its wings. Thorny Rose's outer garment was hooked to the long skirt inside. If it was torn apart, she would be stripped naked. What would become of her, the great deputy hall master, in broad daylight? Thus, she tried her best to stop Mu Qingya, but her expression instantly turned ugly. Hall Master Mu, can you tell this subordinate why this is? There's no time to explain. Hurry and take off your clothes and see if there's anything dirty on them. Also, hurry and prepare to evacuate this place. Everyone must evacuate. Take all the test subjects with you. You only have half an hour to prepare. You must be quick, quick. A dark and slender figure abruptly appeared beside Mu Qingya. Seeing her slightly flustered appearance, he couldn't help but frown. Who are you? Mu Qingya untied a jade pendant from her waist and smashed it to the ground, revealing a silver token inside. She handed it to the demon-masked hall master and said in a deep voice, "You're the person in charge of this stronghold, the Burrowing Hall's hall master Gong, right?" "I'm the Soaring Heavens Hall's hall master, Mu Qingya." 15 minutes later. The demon-masked hall master stared coldly at the flashing flames on the hillside in the distance and didn't speak for a long time. Thorny Rose clutched the coarse clothes she had just changed into, and her face was filled with alarm. "What's going on, Hall Master Mu? How did the Crown Prince's people get here so quickly?" Mu Qingya took a deep breath and turned around to whisper, "Let's go. Abandoning this stronghold is our best choice right now." The demon-masked hall master coldly turned to look at Mu Qingya. "You'll explain this to master and receive your punishment." "I will." Mu Qingya nodded faintly with a nonchalant look on her face. The demon-masked hall master sized her up and sked lightly before shaking his head. "I didn't know that the Soaring Heavens Hall's hall master, who has always been elusive, was actually the mistress of the Talisman patrician family. Hall master, you've really hidden yourself well all these years." Mu Qingya's lips curled into a mocking smile. "So what if you hide it well? You'll still be seen through in the end." "Hall masters, are we going to retreat just like that?" Thorny couldn't help but ask. 15 minutes was not enough time for them to prepare much. They only sent out some important information and test subjects. The rest of the things could only be set on fire. There were still quite a few Heavenly Fate brothers left in the ruined temple to delay the other party. They really did not expect that the little crown princess and her men would arrive so quickly. It was almost as if they had just set the fire in front of them, and the other party had already caught up. They're trying to put out the fire, so the documents haven't been completely burned yet. If they see them, will they? Mu Qingya said coldly, "There's nothing important that can be left there for them to see. The Crown Prince and the Crown Princess are both smart people. They should know this. Let's go." Mu Qingya turned around and said. The group of people entered the transportation array and disappeared in a few minutes. Arbor looked at the ruined temple that was crackling with flames. He looked at the dilapidated walls and fences before looking into the distance with his deep black eyes. He passed through the numerous trees and quietly landed on a spot. "Soaring Heavens Hall Master. We have plenty of time in the future." Chapter 4087. Inside the Mu residence's main hall, a chaotic clamor could be heard. Prince Mo and the little crown princess sat side by side at the head of the hall, expressionlessly looking at the people who were forced to kneel in front of them. Their gazes swept past Mu Jingxing, Choshi, Mu Erkshu, and Mu Ruian. Crown Princess, it was him. It was Second Master who let them in through the front door. We saw it with our own eyes. There's not a word of falsehood. Old Master Mu coldly looked at the second branch's group and couldn't help but angrily shout, Jing Xing. You actually did such a thing. Father. Qiushi hurriedly knelt and cried out for being wronged. Father, how can you believe that our second branch betrayed the Mu family just based on a few juniors from the side branches adding fuel to the fire? No need to quibble anymore. Ever since you were attacked by the harpies last time, Father sent people to keep an eye on you. No wonder the incident last time was so strange. That night when your second branch was on duty, the harpies entered the Mu residence as if they were entering a deserted place, Mu Jingyuan coldly said. Third brother, what do you mean by that? Mu Jingxing was furious. Mu Jingyuan didn't waste time with them and directly threw 2 jade talismans in front of them. Take a look. Don't say that a few juniors wronged you. Mu Jingxing's body trembled slightly, and he looked at the jade talismans on the ground with some horror in his eyes. You should have seen the image jade talisman made by Jojo on the day of Concubine Shi's death, right? Second uncle, what else do you have to say? Mu Xingchen sat in the seat below Mu Jingyuan and stared coldly at Mu Jingxing's family. Wronged, this is wronged. Mu Jingxing angrily said, this is simply framing us. Framing us? Mu Xingchen sneered. He raised his hand and sucked the image talisman into his hand. A trace of divine power entered it and opened the jade talisman's image. It clearly recorded how Mu Jingxing and Mu Erkshu sneaked to the Mu residence's mountain gate, put away the talisman array at the gate, and opened the gate to welcome Mu Jingfeng's group. Second uncle, you still want to continue quibbling? Just as third uncle said. Ever since the incident with the harpies, we have been keeping an eye on your second branch. Now that we have witnesses and material evidence, I really don't understand where you get the face to continue to complain in front of us and even try to absolve yourself of the crime. Mu Jingxing looked at Mu Xingchen's cold expression and his body involuntarily trembled. He suddenly shouted, can you blame me for this? Are you going to blame me for everything? You forced me to do this, you forced me to do this. Mu Jingxing yelled angrily. His hands couldn't help but point at the sky and draw a picture, his face frosty. I've worked hard for this family for so many years. Can't you see how much I've sacrificed? Mu Jingfeng has fallen from power, yet you guys aren't giving me the position of the family head. Instead, we have to support this silly girl on stage. On what basis? Ha! Do you really think that all my years of hard work will go down the drain just because of an order from my ancestor? All of you. You guys are delusional. I think you've gone mad. Elder Dao couldn't help but shout angrily. This is the reason why you betrayed the entire family. First Elder shook his head with a look of disagreement. When did I betray the family? If it wasn't for the family letting me down first. Why would I go to this extent? Chapter 4088. Do you think I wanted to do this? I was forced to do this. You forced me. Mu Jingxing shouted angrily. Old master, old master. Madame Chio's face turned pale. She wanted to go up and stop him, but he flung her away forcefully. Madame Chio fell to the ground and let out a small cry of surprise. Mother! Mu Ruian was truly scared out of her wits. She was the one who was completely kept in the dark. She had no idea that her father and second brother would do such a thing. Most importantly, it was bad enough that you secretly betrayed the family, but now, you were caught in the act. Wasn't this implicating her for no reason? This seventh Miss Mu was so frightened that she trembled all over. She hurriedly crawled to old Master Mu and cried pitifully, Grandpa, Grandpa, this has nothing to do with me. I didn't know. I didn't know that father and brother would do such a thing, great. Old Master Mu had yet to punish them, and the Mu family's second branch was already having an internal conflict. Mu Erkshu's expression was very calm. He kowtowed before Old Master Mu and said, "Old Master, please allow me to report." "You want to quibble with your father, too?" Mu Erkshu calmly shook his head. "Not at all. However, I have my own reasons for doing so." "Your reason is to cause the destruction of our entire Mu family." Mu Jingyang, who was at the side, flew into a rage and raised his leg to kick Mu Erkshu. Mu Jingshao hurriedly stopped him. "Old Five, don't be rash. Let's hear what else he has to say." "As a son, I couldn't stop my father. It's my fault. It's my fault, but as a disciple of the Mu family, I know my bottom line." As Mu Erkshu spoke, he took out a brocade box from his inner world and presented it with both hands. "Grandpa, grandson is willing to help father to get close to the person blessed by the heavens because of this. Be careful." Mu Jingzhuang pushed his fourth son, Mu Jingshao, and the rest back defensively. He pointed at him and said angrily, "What kind of harmful thing is in your box?" "Fifth uncle, you'll know once you open it." Mu Erkshu lowered his eyebrows. However, before Mu Jingzhao and the rest could do anything, the brocade box in Mu Erkshu's hand suddenly flew out and landed in the little crown princess's hand. Crown princess. Xiao Ye's heart skipped a beat as he quickly raised his hand to stop her. The little crown princess raised her hand to stop him. Her expression was calm as she said, "They're just some interesting little fellows. They can't hurt me at all." Then, he raised his hand and opened the brocade box. Everyone only heard a buzzing sound as hundreds of pale things flew out, giving everyone a fright. However, they quickly calmed down again. This was because these little things that flew out were all controlled by the young crown prince consort within a transparent, round, watercolored boundary. No matter how they thrashed about inside, they still couldn't escape from that defensive boundary. What a powerful water spirit defensive barrier. Everyone sighed with emotion. From the Mu family's point of view, they always felt that this was the little crown princess's limit, but it wasn't the case every time. The little crown princess would surprise them from time to time, making them inexplicably feel that this crown princess's potential was endless. "What the hell is this?" Mu Jingzhao's expression changed. Chapter 4089. They're a batch of skeletal flying beasts bred by the All-Seers people using improved medicine. Looking at the original form of these little fellows, they should be flying beasts like hummingbirds. At this moment, their skin and flesh had long withered, leaving only a handful of pale bones. "Grandfather, as you can see now, I contacted the All-Seers people to gather more information for everyone." Mu Erkshu took a deep breath and kowtowed heavily to the ground. "I only approached you for the sake of my family, don't make irresponsible remarks," Arbor coldly interrupted him. A faint cold light flashed through Mu Erkshu's lowered eyes. "You originally wanted to release these little fellows and cause chaos by surprise, then take the opportunity to escape. Why do you say that, Crown Princess? No matter how glib your tongue is, you can't wash away the crime of following Mu Jingxing and destroying the Mu family's talisman array. You and Mu Jingxing went to the Mu family's mountain gate together to welcome the group of All-Seers disciples that Mu Jingfeng brought. You killed your way into the Mu family and killed many clan members. This is definitely the truth, right? Bastard!" Mu Jingzhuang pointed at Mu Erkshu and shouted angrily, "Father, elders, the second branch definitely can't be allowed to stay." Mu Tsang sighed faintly and looked at Mu Jingxing and the others. He shook his head and said, "Then, remove the second branch's name from the Mu family's genealogy and banish them from the capital." "Father!" Mu Jingzhuang called out in dissatisfaction, as if silently blaming his father for not dealing with matters with enough severity. Such a great crime of betraying the clan, yet he only raised it up high and let it go lightly. This punishment was too light. But how could he understand Mutsang's heart as a father? Even a vicious tiger would not eat its cubs, let alone personally giving the order to kill the second branch's entire family. Mutsang knew that he could not do it. Since the second branch had disloyal intentions towards the Mu family, they could no longer stay in the family and were banished far away. In the future, whether their family was rich or poor, it had nothing to do with the family. No, grandfather, you can't chase me out of the family. Mu Ro-yi cried out with a frightened expression. Grandfather, I'm your biological granddaughter, grandfather. Mutsang waved his hand and had several disciples of the Mu family drag the entire second branch out. Mu Ro-yi wanted to scream again, but an impatient Mu clan disciple found a rag and stuffed it into her mouth. As Mu Jingxing was taken out, he shouted angrily, I refuse to accept this. I won't accept it no matter what. Old patriarch. First elder frowned and couldn't help but say, will the people of the Mu family's second branch cause any more trouble? After all, from the looks of it, this family was not going to let the matter rest. Mutsang shook his head in disappointment and exhaustion. Send someone to keep an eye on them. Tell them to pack up and leave the city. With that, he turned to look at the Crown Prince and Arbor with an apologetic expression. Your Highness, I've made a fool of myself. Prince Emo shook his head and didn't say anything. Arbor glanced at the group of skeletal hummingbirds that were trapped in his water spirit barrier and couldn't get out no matter how hard they tried. After some thought, he first threw them into a purple storage talisman. She could take these little things out to study when she had the time. She could see that a black crystal the size of a grain of rice was suspended in each of these little fellows' half-fist-sized skull. Chapter 4090. If she could peel off these black crystals and study them carefully. She didn't know if she could find a way to crack them. However, she had a lot of things to do now, so she'd have to wait until she had the time to study them. This thing couldn't be rushed. After Arbor finished thinking, he raised his head and looked in the direction of Mutsang and the others. He stood up and said, take care of the rest, we'll return to the palace first. Then, he took out a box and threw it to Old Man Mu. There are a few sets of defense array glyphs inside. See if you can set them up around the house. Mutsang's expression was a bit excited. He took the box and nodded, then stood up. Jojo. Crown Princess, please wait. First Elder also hurriedly stood up and presented a token with the Mu family emblem with both hands. This is the family emblem. In fact, it should have been given to you when you came out of Chaoyang Pavilion. You're the chosen patriarch of Chaoyang Pavilion. If it was in the past, perhaps some clansmen would be dissatisfied. However, from now on, I believe that no one will raise any doubts. Arbor frowned slightly. The three elders cupped their hands and said in unison, Crown Princess, please don't refuse. Crown Princess, please don't refuse. Arbor nodded and raised his hand to take the token from First Elder. He said faintly, since you want me to be the patriarch, then from this moment on, you have to listen to me in everything. Including the daily training of the clan's disciples and so on. The three elders nodded in unison. We'll listen to the patriarch's instructions. Then, the patriarch's succession ceremony, Arbor shook his head. Unusual times, let's keep everything simple. Gather all the disciples here. Yes. The Mu family had gone through 2 great battles and lost more than half of its disciples. Now, the entire family, from the elder council to the clan's ordinary disciples, added up to less than 1,000 people. However, after the 2 great battles, the ordinary disciples' temperament had improved a lot. This was actually a good thing. Many cancer-like existences in the family had been purged. After removing the dregs, what was left should be the essence. Even so, Xiao Mu still looked down on these people from the Mu clan. After all, compared to the phoenixes, the Mu family's combat prowess was incomparable. A quarter of an hour later, many of the Mu family's disciples were neatly dressed and gathered in front of the hall. A group of disciples lined up in a square formation and stood under the broad steps, looking up at the people standing in front of the hall. The little crown princess stood at the front of the crowd expressionlessly, staring at them with a sharp gaze. "Greetings, Patriarch." The three elders of the Mu clan cupped their hands together. Following that, the disciples at the bottom of the stairs took a step forward in unison, kneeled on one knee, and cupped their hands in salute. "Greetings, Patriarch." "Greetings, Patriarch." The voices of the crowd of disciples were loud and clear, like the waves of the sea spreading outwards, shaking the mountain forest and slowly rippling in the air. In the darkness before dawn, that voice rose and fell for a long time. Everyone's heart was surging with emotions. Today, Tian Yun killed my people and trampled on my land. In the future, he would make him pay with his blood. He would pay 100 times the price. As soon as the little crown princess finished speaking, the disciples immediately raised their arms and shouted loudly, "Blood for blood! Blood for blood!" Mu Tsang stroked his beard and nodded comfortingly. Chapter 4091. Open the city gates. His Highness Prince Chen has returned to the capital. Open the city gates. Following waves of excited shouts, the city guards busied themselves. As the winch moved, 2 rows of soldiers worked together to push open the heavy city gates made of huge rocks from the inside out. Duan Yu was dressed in pitch-black military armor, and his long hair was tied into a ponytail that hung down to his waist. With a whip in hand, he strode forward on his horse. After so many days of marching, his originally porcelain-white skin now revealed a healthy wheat color. Looking at the cheering commoners on both sides of the street, a faint trace of astonishment flitted through the man's inky eyes. In his opinion, Mo Lian dispatched 1 million soldiers to station in Fengyang City to lend him a hand. Naturally, it was impossible for them to attack. However, the entire Tsang province's imperial court was unaware, and neither were the commoners. Thus, in their opinion, His Highness Prince Qin, who could persuade the Divine Prefecture army to withdraw and return home without suffering any losses in Tsang province, was simply a godlike existence. Right at this moment, Wu Yong led a group of people out of the city to welcome them. When they met, he immediately dismounted with a wide smile and went forward to greet them. This old official greets His Highness Prince Qin. Prime Minister Wu, no need to be so courteous. Duan Yu nodded slightly. Wu Yong couldn't help but step forward in joy. The tall and slender young man beside him also stepped forward to greet him. Greetings, His Highness Prince Qin. Duan Yu swept him a nonchalant glance. Wu Yong turned to glare at that young man and waved his hand, indicating for him to retreat. He then said to Duan Yu with a smile, Your Highness, His Majesty sent this old official to welcome you. Let's return to the palace now. His Majesty has been waiting for Your Highness since early this morning, so he must be anxious now. Duan Yu nodded slightly. There was a small situation on the way, so we were delayed. Thankfully, Your Highness returned safely. This is our entire Tsang province's blessing. Wu Yong chuckled as he mounted his horse and led the group to retreat slightly, calling for Duan Yu to go first. After the caravan advanced, the commoners on both sides of the street cheered thunderously for His Highness Prince Chen's name. Their high spirits and enthusiasm made Duan Yu feel a bit strange. If they knew the truth, Duan Yu furrowed his brows and remained silent. Behind the crowd, a blue and white palanquin had been waiting for a long time. At this moment, a soft voice sounded from the palanquin. Xiao Ju, help me out. Let's walk forward. Miss, it's too crowded here. Be careful. The maidservant disapprovingly helped her miss out of the sedan. He reached out and grabbed her arm. Miss, it's so messy here. It's not appropriate to squeeze through. Then help me stand there. This woman was about 20 years old. She had a slender figure and fair skin. She was obviously a young lady from a large aristocratic family. Miss, you haven't fully recovered from your injuries, so you shouldn't come up and down again. Although the maidservant called Xiao Ju was grumbling, her footsteps moved as she supported her young miss and walked towards the stairs behind her. Now that Qi Liren was standing at a higher height, she could clearly see the man in the middle of the crowd, who was slowly riding his horse along the wide street. It's really him, Xiao Ju, it's really him. Yes. Xiao Ju nodded and said, that day, when Miss finished her consultation with Divine Physician Gao and returned to the city, she encountered His Highness Prince Qin. I heard that His Highness left the city in a hurry that day because of his mother. Chapter 4092. His mother. Qi Liren turned her head slightly to glance at the maidservant. What happened to his mother? His Highness's mother, noble consort Duan, passed away some time ago. The maidservant lamented. His Highness stayed on Lonely Mountain for a whole month to keep vigil over his mother's coffin. Every commoner in the capital knows about this. Everyone praises His Highness the Fourth Prince for his filial piety and intelligence, far surpassing all the princes in the court. Qi Liren pursed her lips into a smile and nodded, a faint luster flowing in her eyes. Let's go back and discuss this with family head. The young maidservant was taken aback. Discuss what? Although she didn't understand her miss's meaning, she didn't say anything and helped her miss down the steps, returning to the sedan chair. Miss, your injuries are quite serious. Divine Physician Gao's meaning is that if there's nothing else, Miss should recuperate more at home. Got it. Qi Liren's hand moved, but before spiritual energy could form, she felt a stifling pain in her chest. She could only give up and sigh, my injuries have damaged my lungs and meridians. I reckon I won't be able to fully recover without a year or so. Don't worry, Mississippi. With Divine Physician Gao's diagnosis and treatment, you will slowly recover. The young maidservant flattered, you are our clan's most talented miss. You were injured because of the clan's affairs this time, so family head will definitely distribute the best pills to you. As the maidservant spoke, she helped her miss into the sedan chair. Qi Liren was being carried forward. Involuntarily, she twisted her two slender fingers and lifted the curtain of the sedan chair to look over. However, she only saw that graceful and handsome figure walking far away, leaving only a bit of the setting sun's afterglow following him. Qi Liren smiled knowingly and pursed her lips before lowering the sedan chair curtain. Marrying should be marrying an exceptionally good man. Your Highness, what is this? The young man following beside left Prime Minister Wu Yong impudently stepped forward on his horse and pointed at a bulging bundle tied to the saddle. Prime Minister Wu irritably glared at that young man. Unruly, withdraw. The young man pursed his lips and took advantage of the situation to retreat a few steps behind Wu Yong. A gift for second imperial brother, Duan Yu replied nonchalantly. For the second prince. The young man blinked and asked curiously, can this subordinate take a look? Shut up. Wu Yong's expression changed. He turned his head and glared at the young man. With a spurious smile, Duan Yu tossed that bulging bundle to the young man. The young man immediately beamed with joy. Before Prime Minister Wu could reprimand him, he immediately opened the bundle. From within, a bloody head was revealed. He was so scared that he rolled off the horse and vomited. With Miss Wu's gall, it's best that you don't casually open other people's gift packages. Duan Yu coolly tossed down this sentence before galloping forward on his horse. Prime Minister Wu couldn't help but smile bitterly. He turned around and glared at his daughter, who had vomited so much that her face had turned pale. He shook his head and said, "I told you not to follow, but you insisted on following. Look, you've made His Highness unhappy." Wu Ruame vomited for a while before wiping her face with her sleeve. She angrily tied up the bundle again and mounted her horse. "Your Highness." Wu Ruame chased after him. "I'm not a coward." Duan Yu turned a deaf ear to her cries. He had already entered Sangzhou's imperial city and entered the palace to meet the emperor. Chapter 4093. That night, the announcement to crown the fourth prince as the crown prince came. The ceremony would be held in the Taizong Temple in Mount Taiyuan 3 days later. The entire Sangzhou was in an uproar. There was almost no opposition in the imperial court. After all, the fourth prince had just solved such a big problem in the divine land. Everyone had seen his ability to remain calm. Second prince, second prince. A guard trembled as he ran in with a bundle in his hands. He knelt on the ground and said, "Second prince, His Highness the fourth prince." "Oh no, His Highness the crown prince sent someone to deliver a gift." The second prince and the third prince were sitting there discussing something. They really didn't expect that the announcement to crown the crown prince would come so quickly. It simply caught them off guard. They thought that even if Rongli was deposed, the matter of selecting the next crown prince would have to go through a series of discussions and debates in the imperial court. Who would have thought that it would be so fast that it almost shocked them? When the two of them received the news, they went to the imperial court at night to see His Majesty. However, they were blocked outside. The steward eunuch seemed to mean that His Majesty's health was getting worse and he needed more rest. Ha! Then why did he send the edict overnight? The second prince walked up and down in the hall. At this time, when he saw the guard come forward, he couldn't help but shout, "What gift?" His face was very ugly. He didn't expect that after suppressing the Empress and Rongli's family, this matter was still not over. After suppressing Rongli, Duan Xiaoxi took advantage of it. Now that he thought about it, it was really abominable. This fourth prince was even more abominable than Rongli's family. Wasn't this just watching from the sidelines, watching them fight each other, and then reaping the benefits from the fisherman's quarrel? The guard unwrapped the bag with trembling hands. The second prince took a look and his face became more and more ugly. A head rolled out of the bag. Of course, he couldn't not recognize this person. This was the leader of the assassination team he sent. He originally planned to let them kill Duan Xiaoxi on his way back, but now it seemed that this assassination was a complete failure. The hundreds of assassins he sent were all killed by the fourth prince. The third prince took a deep breath. His expression suddenly changed as he asked, "Second imperial brother, who is this person?" Fourth prince is actually so arrogant, directly sending ahead to second brother. The third prince shouted angrily, "Second brother, we must not let this matter rest." At this moment, the second prince's mind was in a mess. Hearing this, he couldn't help but glare at him in annoyance. How am I not done with him? Second brother, as long as we can afford the price, are we afraid that we won't be able to find someone? The third prince took out a spirit coin card from his pocket and pushed it in front of the second prince. He furrowed his brows and said angrily, "Let's go to Jiawei City's black market and issue a mission. In for a penny, in for a pound. Give this guy." The third prince made a throat-slitting gesture. The second prince's eyes lit up slightly. He raised his hand and patted the third prince's shoulder. "Third brother, if I can ascend the throne, I will definitely not forget your kindness." Of course, of course." The third prince chuckled and said, "Second brother, you know me. I'm really devoted to Big Brother." The second prince's eyes flashed, and he nodded with a smile. Then he turned around and scolded the guard, "What are you still standing there for? Throw this thing out." The fourth prince thought that by sending a head over, he could make him afraid. Ha! How ridiculous! Chapter 4094. That guard trembled and was just about to tie up the package with the human head again. Suddenly, a buzzing sound was heard, and several mosquitoes flew out of the skull. As soon as the mosquitoes touched his hands, they immediately ignited into a raging fire. He was in so much pain that he threw the package to the ground and screamed as he retreated. These fiery, evil, poisonous mosquitoes were really very powerful. In just a few minutes, they had burned the person to a crisp, leaving only a pile of bones that fell to the ground with a thud. This unforeseen event scared the second prince and the third prince so much that they started to tremble all over. The two of them shouted in unison, "Protect the emperor, protect the emperor." Many guards in the courtyard rushed in and surrounded the two princes. They waved the swords in their hands in a disorderly manner to cut down the mosquitoes in the air. However, those fiery, evil, poisonous mosquitoes flew extremely fast and at extremely tricky angles. In a moment of carelessness, several guards were bitten. Immediately, a wave of evil fire burned from their bodies. This burn scared the many guards around them and they hurriedly moved aside. Just as they moved aside, a gap appeared in the group of guards that surrounded the two princes. With a buzzing sound, two fiery, evil, poisonous mosquitoes flapped their wings and flew in that direction. Their speed was abnormally fast and they flew in front of the second prince in just a few seconds. Cold sweat dripped down the second prince's head. His eyes were fixed on the two mosquitoes flying in front of him and his eyes couldn't help but meet at a point. When he saw the two fiery, evil, poisonous mosquitoes flapping their wings and flying towards his face with a buzzing sound. The second prince didn't say anything and hurriedly opened his defensive spirit tool. At the same time, he pulled a guard in front of him to block. Ah! 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 That guard was bitten by the poisonous mosquito and a flame ignited in his body. As for the other poisonous mosquito that pounced on the second prince's face, it was blocked by his defensive barrier. The second prince let out a sigh of relief and secretly rejoiced in his heart. It seemed that these poisonous mosquitoes couldn't break through his level 15 defensive spirit tool for the time being. However, as soon as the defensive spiritual artifact was activated, the spiritual energy in his body was being consumed at an abnormally fast rate. In order to prevent himself from dying from the exhaustion of his spiritual power, the second prince hurriedly grabbed the third prince. The two of them were escorted into the inner hall by the guards. They sealed all the doors and windows, and only then did their bodies collapse weakly. The third prince's face was a little pale as he said, "I didn't expect fourth prince to be so vicious." Not only did he chop off the assassin's head, but he also gave him a few mosquitoes that could poison people. If it wasn't for the fact that there were too few of them, he and his second brother might have really died there. "It's still all right," the third prince stammered. "There aren't many mosquitoes. Otherwise, both of us brothers would have died here." The second prince's face was full of malice. "Do you think he didn't think that such a small number of poisonous mosquitoes is not enough to kill us? Then he is." The third prince raised his head and looked at his second brother in astonishment. "He did it on purpose." The second prince gritted his teeth and said, "He deliberately tormented us and used this as a pretext to tell us not to act blindly without thinking. Rosé, he has countless ways to make us brothers die quietly." The third prince shuddered. But he saw the second prince's eyes ruthlessly say, "Ah. I'll send someone to Joe City right now and see how long he can be arrogant and despotic. Fourth Duan, if you block the way, you deserve to die." Chapter 4095. The second prince has already received your highness's gift, the hidden guarding reported dryly with downcast eyes. Duan Yu leaned against the window, his fingers casually flipping through a book, but his eyes didn't linger on it at all. Return to the academy in 3 days. Ing was taken aback. Is it because of the Heaven Origin Tournament's finals? But with His Majesty's current condition, it seems somewhat unwise for your highness to leave at this time. Everyone knew that it was better to stay in Phoenix Emperor City at this critical time. Duan Yu knitted his brows. I have an appointment with someone. Ing sighed. He knew he couldn't persuade him, so he didn't say anything else. As a subordinate, he would do whatever his master said. At this time, a person appeared from the window, and his figure swayed slightly. Ing quickly walked out the door and soon returned to Duan Yu's side. Your Highness, there's news from the second prince's side. That person sent people to Jiwei City overnight. Duan Yu blinked, and his fingers subconsciously flipped through a page of his book. He asked dryly, he wants to hire assassins again. Didn't he have anything more interesting? His methods were so inferior that it was simply disappointing. Your Highness, we've already sent people to keep an eye on them. Should we? Duan Yu waved his hand absent-mindedly. No need. Since it's something that can be solved with money, why go through so much trouble? He said indifferently, you also go and issue a mission. Ing bowed obediently in astonishment, and his expression was a bit odd when he left. In terms of spending money, could this second prince compare to His Highness in terms of wealth? However, the second prince would probably cry if His Highness screwed him over like this. We don't have enough men of sacrifice recently. If the people from Jiwei City come, you will lead people to capture them. Whether it's feeding them drugs or extracting their souls, we'll keep them for our own use. Let these people do the dangerous missions. Don't worry, I have plenty of puppet talismans. You just need to lead people to capture them. This will also prevent our people from going out on missions. I'm always worried that your brains aren't good enough and you'll be tricked to death. It's not easy for us to nurture you all. Ha! Ing walked out with a twitch of his mouth. He waved his hand, and several figures appeared beside him. Do you understand what your highness means? I want him alive. After capturing them, search their belongings and gather enough money to go to Jiwei City and issue a mission to protect his highness. The worst part was His Highness had said that anyone who came from Jiwei City was basically a fugitive. Regardless of whether they came to kill him or to protect him, he would capture them and keep them alive. Whose Highness could be so deceitful? This was the prelude to causing trouble. If the city lord of Jiwei City knew the details, it was unknown whether or not he would come to His Highness with his sword. His black city had suddenly become empty. All the assassins had been taken away. This was not someone's deliberate bait. He had walked right into the trap. At the same time, Dean Yun, who was far away in Wind Thunder City, had successively received a few groups of students and instructors of the academy. At this moment, the dean was listening to the report of a student who had rushed in with a dumbfounded expression. Dean. Someone else is here. Yun Piaomiao asked expressionlessly, what amazing academy came this time? He really wanted to ask the people in charge of these academies if they had nothing better to do. Chapter 4096. What did the Imperial Academy's Tianyuan ranking finals have to do with you people? Did you have nothing better to do? You came to the Imperial Academy to watch the competition, but in reality you came to pick a fight. Humph. Yun Piaomiao paced back and forth on Ethereal Peak with his hands behind his back. Go, ask the little stoic when they're coming back. This was truly incredible. There were so many other academies fighting their way to the Imperial Academy, so how could they not accept the challenge? Wouldn't they be cowards if they didn't accept the challenge? The Crown Princess and the others should be back on the day of the competition, the cultivation hall's chief elder cook said with a chuckle as he sipped tea from his teacup. But you don't have to worry. Elder Cook took another sip of tea and said with a chuckle, the little Crown Princess and the others are very responsible. They probably won't abandon our academy. They'll naturally come back when the time comes. Yun Piao really wanted to chuckle at him. The little fellow was so angry when she left. I wonder if she'll be so angry that she won't come back. How's that possible? Elder Ku waved his hand vigorously. Although I haven't interacted with this child for a long time, I understand her personality very well. You understand? Yun Piao couldn't resist rolling his eyes. What kind of understanding do you have? Of course. Elder Ku chuckled and stroked his extremely smooth beard. A little fellow like the little stoic who has a sharp tongue but a soft heart won't blame Headmaster Yun Fei. A proud little fellow like that will only blame herself when something happens. How could she blame others? Yun Piao was startled when he heard this. He then turned to glance at Elder Ku and nodded pensively. Elder, you're quite knowledgeable. Elder Ku huffed and glared as he snorted. I've crossed more bridges than you've walked on. I've read the world's myriad forms. Is there anything I don't know? All right. Don't worry. Let's settle down those academies who came to cause trouble first. Headmaster. The two team mentors from Umbra Academy and Jiawei Academy request an audience. Yun Piao's handsome face tensed up, revealing a displeased expression. These people really don't know when to stop. Yun Piao raised her head and saw two instructors, one tall and one short, one fat and one skinny, walking towards her with a smile on their faces. Dean Yun, it's an honor to meet you. Yun Piao looked at the two expressionlessly. Oh, so it's Instructor He Wei from the Umbra Academy and Instructor Kuo Fu from the Jiawei Academy. It's an honor to meet you. The middle-aged scholar, Instructor He Wei, laughed dryly. He could see the dissatisfaction in Dean Yun's eyes. He hurriedly said with a smile, Dean, please forgive me for taking the liberty to visit you. Yun Piao waved her hand and said indifferently, are the two instructors uncomfortable living in the academy? No. Instructor He Wei hurriedly said with a smile, the academy's hospitality is very considerate. I didn't feel uncomfortable at all. Before Yun Piao could say anything, the short, fat, and broad-axe instructor spoke in a booming voice, I'm here to discuss the heaven-ranking battle with Dean Yun. Yun Piao was confused. What do you mean? It's the heaven-ranking battle. Why do I need to discuss it with you outsiders? Instructor Kuo Fu chuckled. Since so many academies have gathered in Wind Thunder City, why don't we have a big competition? Chapter 4097. Flap flap flap. A small mechanical bird paced back and forth outside the window, knocking on the window. Lord Jojo, who was lying by the window and playing with Xiao Bao's precious beast, squinted her big watery eyes and glanced at that fellow listlessly. These few days, she was busy supervising the Mu family's group of troublemakers to practice martial arts, which made her unbearably busy. Today, she finally had nothing to do, so she was lying here and dozing off for a while. Who knew that a mechanical bird would come? At a glance, it was obvious that this mechanical bird was sent by that fellow Yun Piao. When Arbor thought of Yun Piao, she thought of her brother Yun Fiang and couldn't help but secretly get angry. She allowed that mechanical bird to continuously peck at the window. After a long while, she impatiently opened the window and let that little fellow fly in. After the little mechanical bird hopped in, it opened its beak and spat out a roll of paper. Its beak opened and closed, saying, the location of the final match has been changed to Jiawei City's St. Jiawei Arena. Please arrive at Joe City St. Joe Arena on time before 7:00 3 days later. No waiting for you. Arbor suddenly sat up straight. For a moment, she thought that she was hearing things. She grabbed that mechanical bird back and patted its head. The little machine-operated bird miserably repeated what it had just said. Lord Jojo expressionlessly patted it again. The little mechanical bird repeated. She patted it again. And again when she patted the bird's head for the 5th time, Prince Mo was just about to stride into the bedroom. She heard that mechanical bird let out a flustered and exasperated cry. Are you done yet? How many times do you repeat that sentence? Please arrive at Joe City St. Joe Arena on time before 7:00 3 days later. No waiting for you. Flap 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 flap, the little mechanical bird vigorously flapped its wings and angrily hopped out of the window. It flapped its wings and flew high up into the blue sky. Arbor expressionlessly looked at the bird that flew out. She stretched out her finger and poked Xiao Bao's precious beast, whose butt was facing her. Xiao Bao's precious beast had probably already been oppressed. Right now, it didn't even want to move its butt. When she poked it, it shook its body slightly and continued to lie on the table, pretending to be dead. Mo Lien couldn't help but twitch her lips. How deranged was his little wife to the point that none of the little beasts wanted to pay attention to her. The only weirdo who could anger the mechanical bird was probably his little wife. Lady Qiao Qiao expressionlessly raised her head and looked at her husband who was walking in from the door. She raised her small arm. Mo Lien immediately hurried over and picked her up with a smile. Together, they sat on the couch in front of the window. He rubbed his head against her small face and asked, "Wifey, what's going on? That mechanical bird just now, was it sent by the Academy to inform us of the competition time?" "Well, it's broken," Arbor said expressionlessly. Mo Lien wanted to laugh but quickly held it back. How could it be broken? It repeated itself 5 or 6 times, asking us to go to some arena in Joe City for the competition. If it's not broken, then what is it? He had never heard of the Royal School's Heavenly Yuan ranking competition being held at Joe City's underground black market's battle arena. What was wrong with it? Mo Lien took the roll of paper from the little girl's hand and flipped it open. She read 10 lines at a glance and smiled. Joe Academy, Umbra Academy, and the rest of the 6 academies have all gone to Wind Thunder City to look for Principal Yun. Originally, they were only going to watch the competition. In the end, Instructor Kuo Fu from Joe Academy proposed to upgrade the Heavenly Yuan ranking competition to a competition that all the academies in the 3 continents can participate in. Chapter 4098. The little girl pursed her lips disinterestedly. I don't want to go anymore. Since any Tom, Dick, and Harry could participate in this Heavenly Yuan ranking competition, then wasn't the previous preliminaries meaningless? Mo Lien immediately understood the little emperor's meaning and couldn't help but pinch her small face in amusement. Don't worry, those academies that plan to participate in the Heavenly Yuan ranking competition will hand over a large amount of resources to participate. In addition, they also have to participate in the preliminaries. The preliminaries are only 3 days long, but the intensity should be greater than the danger we encountered when we went to Phoenix Grove last time. Moreover, after the preliminaries, there's basically no time for them to rest and reorganize. They'll directly enter the finals. Arbor took the paper from the man's hand and looked at the instructions and regulations on it. He nodded and said, Joe Academy and the others will agree to such harsh conditions. They must be plotting something. It was no wonder that the little fellow thought of them as a conspiracy. They truly wanted to participate in this competition with such a strenuous and unrewarding task, yet they still had to invite everyone from the Royal Academy to Joe City to participate in the competition. No matter how one looked at it, it looked like they were plotting something. Mo Lien smiled faintly and picked up the little fellow, walking towards the bathing pool. Who cared what kind of conspiracy they were scheming? In any case, if they dared to scheme against them, they would just smack them to death. The little girl tugged at the corner of his lapel and raised her large eyes to glance at him defensively. What are you trying to do in broad daylight? Mo Lien blinked and looked at his wife innocently. Taking a bath. What bath in broad daylight? The little stoic was a bit speechless. After washing up, this hubby will accompany you for an afternoon nap. Jojo, you used to take an afternoon nap every day when you were young. Now that you're a few years older, it seems like you also take less afternoon naps. Nonsense. The little stoic stubbornly refused to admit her mistake. Which day am I not cultivating? Who takes an afternoon nap? Your whole family takes afternoon naps. Mo Lien grinned and rubbed his head against her head. Jojo, be good. Eat more and sleep well, then our baby will grow I.O. Why are you hitting your hubby's head? The afternoon sun brushed past the window lattice. Little Treasure was lying there peacefully, as if it had nothing to live for. It was sad and beautiful. In the bustling harbor, ships of all sizes shuttled back and forth. There were ships anchored at the shore and magnificent pleasure boats slowly docked at the shore. There were even more large cargo ships. One after another, they loaded and unloaded their cargo, shuttling back and forth in an endless stream. Lady Jojo stood at the bow of the ship. She was dressed in a rose-colored dress and wore a jade phoenix hairpin on her head. Her face was devoid of any expression as usual. Hugging around Treasure Beast, the little stoic leaned against the Crown Prince's side and surveyed the surroundings for a while before looking up at the Crown Prince. We've arrived. Because they had never been to Jiawei City before, the teleportation glyph array wasn't sure if it could teleport them to the city in one go. Therefore, Mo Lien brought Tong and the others to a nearby teleportation portal in Arbor. Seeing that Jiawei City wasn't too far away, they directly took a ship to come over. She felt that it was more reliable. Ahahaha. Classmate Xiao, classmate Mo, you've finally arrived. Ahahaha. A burst of hearty laughter came from the front. Arbor and the others looked up and saw Instructor Ma from the cultivation hall leading 17 to 18 students to welcome them with a grin. His expression was full of gratitude that said, "You've finally arrived." Chapter 4099. The little stoic looked around. Where are Xian and the others? The cultivation hall's mentor Ma laughed mockingly and said, yesterday, student Xian and the others had a conflict with several students from Jiawei Academy. Student Qi Xian and student Ko Hongwen both suffered minor injuries. Seeing the little stoic's small face instantly darken, Mentor Ma hastily waved his hand and said, "But don't worry, the other party is 100 times more miserable than them. They aren't minor injuries." Mo Lien led her displeased wifey down the ship's bow and glanced at Mentor Ma. "Why is that?" Mentor Ma sighed with a bitter expression. "This matter is a bit complicated. Let's return to the Academy's encampment first." Arbor and Mo Lien naturally wouldn't refuse. Since the Academy had already arranged accommodations for them, then that was for the best. It would save them the trouble of looking all over the place to find a place to stay. Mentor Ma and the others enthusiastically led them to the Academy's accommodations. This competition will probably last for about 7 days. Mentor Ma led the way in front and turned to say to them with a chuckle, "Principal Yun has a manor in Jiawei City, and it's not far from Jiawei Arena. We'll stay in that manor for a while for the time being." Arbor couldn't help but interrupt as he listened to the mentors nagging along the way. "What's going on at Jiawei Academy?" Mentor Ma was hesitating on how to speak when a student beside him couldn't resist saying, "It's our first time coming to Jiawei City. I feel like their night market is quite lively. Especially at night, it's quite nice to walk through the streets and have a drink or two in Joe City's taverns. After we settled down, we invited some friends to the tavern for a drink yesterday. At that time, student Ko Hongwen and student Xian Xian also went with us to play. Who knew that we would run into Joe Academy's green-haired group along the way, and everyone got into a fight at the slightest disagreement. Another student beside him hastily interjected, "What slightest disagreement? They were the ones who started it. That green-haired bastard was fucking arrogant and acted like a big brother in front of us. He said he was the relative of the Mad Python mercenary group's vice commander, the largest mercenary group in Joe City. You're pretty good at cursing, but you don't have any skills. You were slapped to the ground by Xian Xian." That's right, that's right. This green-haired guy was stunned by Xian Xian's slap and didn't get up for a long time. After that, the people from their academy went crazy and attacked us. Fuck. If it wasn't for the fact that they had the advantage in numbers, we would have fought them to the end last night. Mentor Ma smacked the student's head with the back of his hand and scolded in exasperation, "The academy sent you out to train, not to cause trouble and fight all day long. Teacher, fighting is also a form of training. Alright, we're just around the corner. If you have anything to say, we'll talk when we get back." Mentor Ma chuckled and said to Arbor, "Student Xiao, don't worry. Student Xian Xian and the others are fine. You call this nothing serious." The little small stoic face was taut as she expressionlessly picked up the little fatty's drooping arm. Little fatty immediately squealed like a pig being slaughtered. Mentor Ma's face turned green. "What's going on? You weren't injured that badly just now." "Mentor, the people from Joe Academy just came to beat us up." Several students shouted, filled with righteous indignation. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.